Bam, vani smo.
Pozdrav svima i dobrodošli na ovu epizodu podcasta Nebitno bitno. Današnja epizoda bit će ispričana na engleskom jeziku, a razlog je taj što naš današnji gost dolazi iz dalekog Los Angelesa. On je filmski veteran koji je radio na Oskarom nagrađivanim filmovima za Disney kao što su Feast, Big Hero 6, Frozen i Tangled. Također je član žirija Ampasa koji odlučuje na samim Oscarima. Profesor je na sveučilištu u Južnoj Kaliforniji. Radio je također za Netflix, a danas radi kao konzultant za Warner Brothers. Dame i gospodo, predstavljam Josh Staub or Staub, whatever.
Either one works.
Either one works. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We're extremely excited. Before we get into the details of the animation and all the work that you did for Disney, tell me, please, what brings you here to Croatia, specifically
and to Varaždin?
Yeah. So this is my third time to Varaždin, and I'm participating and helping with the festival, the Vafi Animation Festival.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I came for the first time 13 years ago, and then came again 3 years ago, and I just love the festival. I love the people here. I've just fallen in love with this town. So I'm really happy to be here.
So you have been only in Varaždin, or you visit other parts of?
No, I've been to other parts. As a guest, the people running the festival have been very gracious and let me learn a lot about Croatia and taken me to many of the amazing sites in different cities. So.
Do you have maybe any site or city that you remember?
I won't remember the name of it. Actually, a couple highlights. One is, I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly, but it's like Turkestan or the castle.
Trakošćan.
Yeah,
yes. It's hard to pronounce for an English speaker. Trakošćan,
is amazing. And then I'll also forget the name of this, but you'll know what it is. The waterfall park.
Plitvička jezera.
Yes.
Plitvice Lake.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's so spectacular.
Yeah, it is indeed. It's just several days ago. It was placed on the most beautiful European national park by one English tourist information portal. Yeah,
does not surprise
Lake.
me. Yeah. It is spectacular.
It's so beautiful there, and it's a fascinating place. Absolutely.
And what do you think of Varaždin? What brings you here again?
Our small.
I love Varaždin. I don't know. I think the people are wonderful. The town is just beautiful. There's so much history
Absolutely,
here.
this is very well.
It feels like a little home away from home for me now. I really love it.
After only free time.
Yes,
Very nice.
yes.
Nice. So you really liked our
I really
country.
do. I really do.
Our little Vienna.
Yes.
Varaždin is called Little Vienna. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
When you think about it and the whole the infrastructure of the city, it has this Hungarian feeling to it.
The Central Europe, not
Central
only
Europe.
Hungarian.
Yeah.
It's characteristic for all Central European towns. And I'm not sure. Did you know the fun fact that Varaždin was at one part of Croatian history the capital of Croatia?
Yes,
you know the
that.
story.
Yes.
And then it burned because the drunkard guy placed the fire not unintentionally, and
there are three
most
theories.
of 300 years, yeah.
No, 3 theories about how the city burned.
Yeah, but I think the most proved one was that with the drunk, because there was some court decision that he get, I think, 10 or 20 hits with the fire for that, because it was not his intention and he was just
drunk.
Because he was just drunk. So he was just hit him because it's a bigger crime, but it was no intention. So he get
but let's get to funny topics.
But that's a funny topic. The drunken guy from Sarajevo has burned the city and changed the course of Croatian history because now Zagreb is the capital. But as I read in the newspapers, you had one of the biggest honor in this city. It's to fire from the cannon. Am I right?
I did. I was surprised by that today that I was going to have the honor to do that. It was an amazing experience.
Really?
My ears are almost done ringing.
Okay, so you are good now. You hear us.
It's been 3.5 hours since actually firing the cannon, but it was a really special, memorable moment. So it's very loud. I mean, the cannon isn't huge. I still can't believe that something that small can make that loud. It's so loud. I can't even imagine like any larger canon, like what that must be like,
Yeah.
or even in battle.
In battle when
just
there's
doing that over and over again.
200.
I can't.
Like
It's
Fat
just
Bertha,
crazy.
you know?
Oh, yeah, the Fat
Bertha would
Bertha
be
is Fat
like-
Bertha. Yeah, we have our tiny Bertha, but it's noisy Bertha, noisy bug.
How long ago did you fire the cannon? It was
3.5 hours ago.
3.5 hours
My,
ago.
like
Today,
literally,
no,
yeah.
my
Yeah, today.
ears are
Adjusting
almost healed.
still.
Like they're still kind of adjusting. So I may be speaking really loudly
No.
right now. I have
No,
You
you're
cannot be
fine.
louder than me.
Okay,
You cannot be
okay.
because I'm from the coastal part and we speak very loud on the Mediterranean part of
Okay.
Croatia. So
he and cannon.
yeah, we okay.
Yeah, so what brings you also to Varaždin, I believe, is that you also had a lecture in University North about your whole filmmaking experience, right?
Yes, so that was 3 years ago. I gave a lecture there and spoke about filmmaking and animated filmmaking and my career. That was another great experience, visiting the campus and yeah.
So you liked our little university here.
I do,
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah, it's the youngest university in Croatia, as far as I know. So
Okay.
it's everything is newly founded and built. So
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential in there because I'm
absolutely,
I'm a
yeah.
student of it and I can see a lot of potential.
I
in
hope
it.
that we will realize that potential.
Yeah, because it, like you said, the school that in America that you are also a lecturer at is the only like true film school in the world.
No, the biggest film school,
the biggest.
not the only one.
It's not even the biggest. It's just
Oh, yeah?
considered the top.
The top,
film-
the
the
top
biggest,
tier
yeah.
of film
and it is
school.
also the first. So
Yeah,
it was the
the
first
first.
film school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has sense because it's located where it
Yes.
is located. Yeah.
What do you mean
Yes.
by saying it is the first film school? What do you mean by that?
First in history.
Yeah, it was I think it's just the first university that. It's part of the University of Southern California, which is a huge university. But the film school, or it's actually called the School of Cinematic Arts, is the first that is dedicated just to the craft of filmmaking.
Oh,
So
like the whole.
yeah.
Wow.
Interesting, interesting. But when we are speaking about Croatia, let's just we have one question there in that regard that we wanted to ask. How good are you, let's say, knowledgeable about Croatian animation industry? Because for maybe the movie is Surrogat. Yeah, I'm not sure about the translation of that. It was. Oscar-winning Croatian animation film
The
from
60s.
the 60s, yes.
1962. I
Oh, you
believe.
know better than us.
Yeah, I think that's right. So I know about that film specifically because the first time I was here, there was an exhibition of his works. And actually, I saw the film. I hadn't seen it before, but I saw the film and was very impressed. Like has a very specific style.
Yeah.
And actually, I was working on a project at Disney at the time that I thought, just in terms of the style, like we were doing a kind of quirky looking aspect to the film, and I used it as one of the references to show the team in terms of kind of like the comic timing and just kind of the surprising
Elements of the film.
elements of it. So, in fact, I was just talking to the director of that project that I'm referring to at Disney just the other day, and he 100% was like, "Yes, I remember that film." So
it's really influential.
it
till
is
this day.
influential.
Surrogat
yeah.
was influential in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, very glad to hear
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Because I know that I believe it was Hitchcock who said at the time that Croatia or Yugoslavia rather is going to be like the head of animation in the world, but I mean he was wrong. But
Yeah.
but
we were
on
period
a really
of time.
good track. And when you
Yes.
see that film, it's like
Yeah.
wow, we really had something going on there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do
Okay.
you have any more or
Do
except from Surrogat?
you know any more? Yeah, of Croatian movies?
I mean, so movies, yes, but more like live action movies. But I mean, obviously, I'm familiar, having been here, getting to see the films that are being made today, like especially from the young people here. I'm very impressed, and I'm part of the Academy. So I'm an Oscar voter, but I also am a jury member for the Student Academy Awards. So I see films from everywhere all around the world made by students. I mean, they're usually older students. But so when I see the films here at the festival, I'm always impressed at the quality of them, especially for how young many of the students are.
Interesting. Because in Croatia we always tend to think that our movies are bad in comparison to all other movies. It's some kind of masochism. I'm not sure. But
I don't know. I mean, I will say I always, again, having this connection with Croatia, I've always, when the international films are coming out for the Oscars, I'm always keeping an eye open for what the Croatian film will be. But unfortunately, like I've had times where I've mentioned to people here the film that was submitted for the international Oscar, and people are like, "What? What is that film?" So I don't know. It's unfortunate, but
we have the situation that our best movies are not displayed on the Croatian national television for maybe some political or some other reason, because maybe the director is not in a good relationship. It's a Croatian way.
I think we have great films. It's just that we as Croatian, youngsters, and we tend to prefer to go to films made in Hollywood more than films in Croatia.
There is always we have the let's mindset. Not everybody, but there is present in part of the people that always which is foreign, it's better.
So we have the opposite problem, because I tend to not like American films and tend to like international films.
But it's the same thing.
Same problem.
In Croatia,
I guess same problem.
We don't have a big opinion about Croatian film, but for every other countries have the better.
So you think the future is bright with Croatian?
Yeah, we have
100%.
Yeah, we have potential, but I think one of the problems of Croatian movie industry that we have a relatively small market. We have Croatian market is in Croatian country have little less than 4 million population. There may be around 4 million Croatians in the rest of the world who are potential viewers of the film, and perhaps the neighboring countries because of the language. That's the English-based movie have the
bigger audience,
much bigger market that can be watched.
I hope things are changing. I mean, not just for Croatia, but for international films in general. I feel like American audiences are getting finally more used to subtitles and seeing films that are made not just American films. So again, I hope that more Croatian films get
that
seen.
Would be great. That would be great.
Why do Americans have a problem with subtitles?
I have no idea. I mean, I'm certainly not one of them.
I'm sorry. I can answer to that question. Why do Italians have problems with subtitles, and why do they synchronize all their movies? Why the Germans synchronize movies?
So this is another thing. I never listen to the dubbed versions. I have to have it in the original language and then with subtitles.
But it's hilarious how Austrians dub Schwarzenegger. That's hilarious.
I also don't like those.
It takes you out of the film.
Because somebody
it feels inauthentic somehow.
Somebody made this with the mouth and say S. You understand, and it's you notice is that maybe on the subconscious level, if not on the conscious level, and it's lowering the my impression on the film. So
I agree.
But if you will get used to the subtitles together with the Germans, Spanish, it's not only specific to USA. I think that will be a great plus for Croatian, and not only Croatian, but many, let's say, small countries, movie industries to have their way,
have their chance to be seen,
to be visible on the global market. And but when we mention the Croatian live action movies, do you have any of your favorites which you like the most?
And I won't remember the names of them, but there was one a few years ago that was submitted for the international jury that was about a school, and it was kind of like a dark comedy where the parent, there was the assumption that there was, this sounds very dark. Like I said, it's a dark comedy.
It's a Croatian film.
But there was like the suspicion of a shooting, I think, inside the school, and so it was all the parents outside, but there was some like waiting to see what was happening. Do you remember this film?
Yeah, but I do not know the name.
Yes. I can't remember the name, but it was the submission for the international jury.
Was the name? Dodatna nastava.
Okay, dodatna nastava. Additional lectures or something. Yeah, in English it's...
the something teacher.
Yeah. Substitute teacher.
Substitute teacher, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah, could be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mika.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember the film.
Yeah.
Wow, I've seen... What year would it be?
Probably 3 or 4 years ago. Anyway, that one sticks out as memorable. But yeah, like I said, I'm always... I watch a lot of films, but I'm always keeping my eye open on
Croatian, on new Croatian films. Yeah, nice. That's very nice to hear.
When maybe you don't have a lot of budget for a film, then the story is the one that's gonna keep the audience and the viewer going.
100%. Yeah.
By the way, since you work for Netflix, I need to ask you: do you maybe heard for I think only Croatian series that was showed on Netflix, the newspaper, novine?
I don't know that. I don't know that one.
It's a very good series.
I will say that Netflix has weird rules about like what plays in which markets.
Yeah, I know.
Like I've been speaking with my Croatian friends here. The film that I worked on at Netflix was an animated film called Leo, and it's an Adam Sandler film, and it literally. I just read this article. It was the #1 animated film on Netflix last year, and it was the #3 film of any kind on Netflix last year. It had over 100 million views. And when I mention it here, nobody knows what I'm talking about.
Because it's not available
but
on
I think
Netflix
it's just because it's not available here.
Yeah.
So Netflix, again, has weird... I think it has to do with the rights of different things and like when films can be shown in different markets around the world. By the legal reasons,
not technical or market reasons.
Yeah. So... if this is called the newspaper,
the
newspaper. So I haven't heard of it, but I will certainly look it up if it's good.
Could it be that because it's a Croatian-speaking film that it's more suited for the European countries more than the
foreign
I honestly don't know because Netflix in America we have a lot of international content.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
But I would say
ours is not in it.
Really, I would say honestly, it's one of the best series that I watched.
It's one of the best, but it's not in the.
It may be, and I just am not aware. But I'll definitely have
to. It's so many series and movies.
There's so much stuff.
Because as a Croatian, we're always happy, when we hear something from Croatia that is doing good in.
Yes.
Because we can't believe, because we think that everything from Croatia is first. Just joking, of course. But okay. If you will have time, then check it up.
I will check it out.
It's a real
recommendation from us.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend it if I honestly didn't like it. Yeah.
Okay.
If you don't like it, it's his fault.
Yeah. No, I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, it's something similar maybe to House of Cards, but in the Croatian context. It's about high politics. One of the main characters is president. The fictional president of Croatia, of course. The other is prime minister, but the let's say team is based around one newspaper house, which is reporting and not reporting about many things that corruption and other things which happens in the.
This sounds like my kind of series.
Yeah. It has some parallels with House of Cards. So
it's very bleak.
What do you mean?
Bleak? I like. Dark, it sounds weird to say I like bleak, but I do like. I watch a lot of like Scandinavian Nordic noir films.
Perfect.
Or films and series. So this sounds like right up my alley.
Yeah.
Okay, then if you will have time, give it a chance. Give it a chance.
If you like Scandinavian filmmaking,
yes, very much.
Then you could like it. And the acting was very good. It is very good.
Okay.
I personally know some of the actors, so maybe I'm subjective part.
You're biased. Yeah, you're biased.
Biased. But I know I was.
It's really good.
Yeah. By my opinion, I don't have anything to add. Okay. We have covered up the Croatian part of thing. I think we should give, let's say, time and space to talk about your career path. So, as far as I'm informed, you started you left not high school, the faculty, the college, for working in the gaming industry. That was your start of your career. If I please tell us what happened. So.
It is a long story, so I'll try to keep
time.
Okay. So I started, I was an artist as a kid, like so many. And I got the opportunity to work for this little startup computer game company over the summer between high school and college. And so I was actually only there for 2 weeks and helped them with this one game. I lived and worked in the owner's basement. I mean, it was literally, there were 5 people at the company. And I was just doing it as a summer job, but, and I was headed off to school. I always loved school. Didn't know exactly what I was going to do for a career. I was interested in art, but also in music and storytelling, writing. But after the 2 weeks, this company, they were like, don't go to school, come work for us. And I'm like...
They said you don't go to school.
They told me not to go to school. And I was like, you guys are nuts. Like, I'm going to go to school. I love school.
5 guys in a basement.
Exactly.
Don't go to school.
Yeah. So I turned them down, and I went to school, and I loved it there. But that fall, the game... It's called Myst, which is very old now, but the game Myst came out, and it just blew up. It became the top-selling computer game of all time. And so this little tiny company all of a sudden was super successful, and they kept asking me to come back.
Still they're asking.
Yeah, they kept asking me while I was at school, like, come on, we're going to do the sequel. We want you to help design the game and like lead the art. And I finally said, okay. And so I left after my first year of college. I was 18 years old, and I moved back into the owner's basement. Yeah. And
back to the basement.
Yeah, back to the basement. And we started making the sequel, which was called Riven. And we ended up growing to 50 people at the company and built a campus. And I ended up being the art director there for almost 14 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's so crazy to say that like to tell that story, because I'm a professor now. So I tell students, like, not every path is like mine. And I still totally believe in school and academics. And for me, I was just in this situation where I had to take this chance because it was just a certain time that I had sort of caught this moment. And it made sense for me, as it turns out.
Unique. It was unique situation, unique opportunity, but also I would say the solid amount of risk. It could all went south. Yeah.
And a little fun fact, since we're doing this as a podcast or a radio kind of thing. So my dad was a nationally syndicated radio talk show host, and during the period where I was trying to decide what to do, he actually had a whole episode of his show where he just brought up my situation and asked people to call in and give their thoughts.
Really?
To give the advice.
Yeah. And I wasn't going to just say, okay, what's the tally? And that's going to be my decision. But it was good to hear people who had experience either staying in school or leaving school, or like what that was.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was an interesting period for
me.
What was
the
result of the voting?
Should
you leave or stay in school?
So the reality is, I think, again, Myst, the game, was so big that people were familiar with the game.
They're like, you should take
and they were like, you got to do this. Because it was so unique of a project. I mean, one of the reasons it was a huge seller is it's not a violent game. It's very kind of cerebral, but it was very beautiful. And we had we had kids who were 8 years old, and we had grandmothers who were in their 80s who loved the game. So it was just
that's the success.
Yeah, it was just such a huge group of people that really loved this game. Anyway, so Riven, we spent 4 years making Riven, and it became the fastest selling computer game of all time. So Myst and Riven sold 10 million copies, which, again, this was like, how many years ago was this? This was like 25 years ago. This was actually when a CD-ROM first came out. Like, this was actually one of the things that a lot of people attribute the success of the CD-ROM, which many people listening to this won't even know what that is. But a lot of people attribute the success of the CD-ROM to the game Myst.
To the game, because
people were buying things to play CD-ROMs
to play the game.
And they get used to that format of.
It's a crazy story.
So we have a pioneer of
one of the pioneers in the CD-ROM industry. Also.
So ironically, not to jump too far ahead, but ironically, I'm not really a gamer. Like I liked games, but I liked the games that I was helping make. And I mean, I liked games somewhat, but I realized that I kind of got frustrated watching people play the games because I think at my core I'm a storyteller, and I want to shape the story in a way that everybody experiences it the same way, in a linear way. And I was, when you're watching somebody play a game and they're testing it, and you see them making wrong decisions. Like you feel like you've set everything up properly, and then they decide to like jump in a boat and go somewhere else, and you're like, no, you were so close to opening the door.
Yeah, there goes the story.
Yeah, exactly. I like the story. It would have been a more optimum experience as the creator for you to do it that way. And I just got really frustrated with that concept. Now, my boss at the time, who is a huge gamer, obviously, he started the company. He would say, well, it's the audience, they're the storyteller. So in a way, we're setting up the world, we're setting up the scenarios, but ultimately the person playing has their story about playing the game, and like their experience is unique. So I see that as very valuable and valid, but as a creator myself, it wasn't fulfilling enough. I felt like it was time for me to get into linear storytelling and actually craft a story. Obviously, when people watch a movie, everybody is experiencing it a little bit differently because they're bringing their own life experience to it. And so what's going to resonate with them is going to be different. But I still felt like I wanted to make things that everybody experienced, and whether they liked it or not, whatever, but at least I had put what I wanted out into the world. So that's why I ended up leaving the games.
After the 14 years.
After the 14 years.
Okay. And you went to the Disney then after the...
Yes, so that is an interesting story also. So while I was still art directing for the game company, so another thing, this game company was kind of in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't in LA or in Chicago or New York or anything. It was in a town called Spokane, Washington.
Ooh.
Washington State, Eastern Washington State, very rural. Nobody's making films there. Nobody's even making games there except for us. And so how was I going to jump from making games in this tiny little place to a place like Disney or Pixar or something like that? Yeah. And so I decided to make a film on my own in my spare time. So I was still working for the game company, but then I felt like I'm going to make a film and learn as much as I can about the filmmaking process by doing it all myself. Yeah. And so that became this short. I spent 18 months working on it. Like after my wife and kids went to bed, I was just like working till, all hours to make this short film. And I really made it, again, for myself as like a learning experience. Yeah. Didn't really think much was going to come of it, except that I was going to learn a lot. Yep. But when I finished it, I thought, well, it'd be cool if I could get it into a film festival so that people could see it. Yeah,
just to show.
I actually thought it would be cool to just sit in a theater and see people who were strangers, like not just my family. Yeah. Or like, it's great. Watch it. And so I put it into a handful of festivals, and it got into all of them, and it actually won awards at all of them. So then I thought, so I started submitting it to more very exclusive festivals, and it ended up blowing up. It screened at over 100 festivals around the world. It was at Annecy and Tribeca, a ton of festivals. And so all of a sudden I had Pixar and Disney and DreamWorks and Blue Sky and all these animation studios actually wanting to meet with me and seeing if I wanted to work for them. So it opened up all these
So you
doors
reversed the positions. You are not seeking for them.
All of
They
a sudden,
started to see. They started to seek
all of
you.
a sudden I had a manager and I was being like shopped around to the studios and it was wild.
Headhunted.
Yeah.
So your head was wanted.
I'm sorry, how long did it take you to make that film?
18 months.
Yeah,
you
it
said.
took 18 months.
But
So
we are talking about the Mantis Parable.
Yeah, the Mantis Parable.
Oh, I like that movie very much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
So it was your first movie.
That was my first movie, and I like I said, I mean, I may not have been the best person to do each of the different aspects of making that movie, but it was really for me to learn. And, you know, I wanted to make this jump. So I knew that, you know, no matter what kind of roadblocks there were going to be, I was going to just like muscle my way through them. So I'm classically trained in piano, so I wrote the score and performed the music. I did the sound effects. I did like all of it myself. Again, it's kind of an experiment and just to learn.
Impressive,
So,
very impressive. So
thank you.
it was your first project just to learn, and it became
and then
the
it kind
mega
of
hit.
became this thing that opened up doors for me. And when I would meet with the studios, they would have seen the film.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then they would also be like, "Wait, you're from this company that made Mist," and so they were very familiar with that as well. So in a weird way, like I didn't actually put together a portfolio.
Yeah.
Again, my story is a little bit unusual. I didn't have to put together things. I was almost not even really interviewed. It was more like they knew the kind of work that I was doing, and they wanted to see like what I wanted to do with them. So ultimately, I ended up choosing to go to Disney.
Why did you choose Disney over the other?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah,
Studios.
so this is also interesting. So I actually, the period that this was, Pixar is in the Bay Area in near Oakland, California, which ironically is where I actually grew up. So I left Oakland and then Pixar started, like right where I used to be. And here I am in the middle of nowhere. And Pixar by this point had made Toy Story, Bug's Life, Monsters, Inc. Mm-hmm. So they were already on like an amazing run. And so all these other studios were trying to like get a piece of that, like figure out how do we make these kinds of films.
Like Pixar,
yeah. And Disney Animation, which everybody knows of, obviously, but had not really done anything like that. The first one they did was Chicken Little. And then they were started on Meet the Robinsons. Mm-hmm. So this was about that period. Yeah. So they were behind in terms of like where Pixar was. Yeah. And I actually was doing a story conference. I was like one of the guest like keynote speakers at a story conference. And I met a guy named Ronnie Del Carmen, who is head of story for Pixar. And he was one of the other lecturers, like one of the other keynote lecturers. And he co-directed Inside Out. He was head of story, I think, on WALL-E. And like he was there forever and Up. He's responsible for like most of the tear-jerking moments in Pixar films. Like he's incredible. And I was in this situation where I was like trying to figure out where to go. And he actually said, "Don't go to Pixar," which is where he was, which at first I was like, that's kind of hurtful.
But he was in a position.
Like, don't come where I am.
Yeah, why
I was
are
like,
you in Pixar?
Why? And he said, because at Pixar, the leadership was already in place and they were not going anywhere. And they were already on this good run and they were like locked in. He said, Disney, however, is just sort of getting things figured out, and they actually don't know. It sounds crazy to say this about Disney Animation, but they don't really know what they're doing.
But
in terms of this,
they didn't have
a big track record at this point with doing those kinds of films, and so they were still just building their team and like figuring out what to do. And I think that was really good advice. So that's why I chose to go to Disney, because he felt like, and it turned out to be true, that I could actually make an impact on the studio and how we were going to make movies, and kind of help set the bar for the kind of quality of films that we would make. So I ended up going to Disney, and my first movie was Bolt that I worked on. So it was after Meet the Robinsons. And Bolt, I mean, I don't know what a lot of people think about Bolt, but I think it was like the first, okay, this is good. Like, this is starting to be good. Not everybody even saw it, but I think it was kind of like a turning point. And then my next film there was Tangled. Tangled, then people was like, oh, okay, they're really here. Back. Like, they're really a force. So yeah, it ended up being the right move for me.
Yeah, I absolutely get you when you say that Chicken Little wasn't like the biggest thing from Disney. Even though I still enjoyed it as a kid, I think it's a great film. But when you compare it to Bolt or Tangled, I get it why people don't consider it as the best part of Disney's, contribution to films.
The other very important part about this time period is that, and another very much like contributing factor for me going to Disney, was Disney bought Pixar. And as part of that deal, John Lasseter, who was the head of Pixar, John Lasseter and Ed Catmull. So John Lasseter was the chief creative officer, and Ed Catmull was the president. And as part of the negotiation with Disney buying Pixar, John Lasseter and Ed Catmull were now going to be running both studios. So they actually took over the direction of Disney Animation. And so that was another big reason why, okay, things are going to change. Like, things are going to be in flux, but we're going to get things figured out. So if that hadn't happened, I don't think Disney Animation would have become what it would end up being in terms of these kinds of films. And I probably wouldn't have ended up going there.
So when that happened, you came to the Disney at around
2007 was my first
year.
Like, when I moved, like my family and I moved down to Burbank, California.
Just to get the time context.
It was fall of 2007.
Okay, and when you mentioned the Burbank, we were just earlier talking about that. You said that is technically the capital of global media and movie industry, not the Hollywood per se.
Yeah,
if I understand, can you just clarify that for our listeners?
Yeah, so people who have not been to Los Angeles, like the Hollywood, people think of Hollywood as very like glitzy and glamorous and like
palm trees. I
mean, there are palm trees, but the reality is Hollywood, if you are somebody who lives in Los Angeles, I think most people look at Hollywood as kind of like this sort of gross little section of Los Angeles that is very touristy, and you don't really want to go to just because it's so crowded. And there are studios there, or kind of like on the fringes of Hollywood, but it's not really where everything is. Burbank, on the other hand, which most people maybe haven't even heard of, is actually where the world headquarters of Disney and DreamWorks and Warner Brothers and Cartoon Network and Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, I mean, like, these huge studios are in Burbank, and we live in Burbank, and it's a very unusual area because it's very residential. So you have lots of just
houses,
regular homes, and then you have these giant studios.
And business buildings.
Everything. Like we said, it's like a Silicon Valley for
it is kind of, and it's centrally located in Los Angeles. It's a little bit like north of downtown Los Angeles, but it's actually kind of a nice little oasis in Los Angeles. It's kind of more green than a lot of the rest of the areas.
So the life is nicer, let's say, in that.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of slow paced and family friendly. Like
Oriented,
it's a. I mean, we really like it. Yeah, we really like it there. There are lots of palm trees, like all throughout Los Angeles.
Always palm trees.
I think when people think of Hollywood or like the glitz and glamour, what they're probably thinking of actually is Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
Like Beverly Hills is actually that.
It's part. The Beverly Hills is part of the Hollywood.
It's still it's part of Los Angeles, but it's its own
neighborhood
thing, town, or
part of the city.
Yeah, and it is like it's very clean. It's very posh. I mean, like during Christmas time, there's palm trees that run down the middle of Rodeo Drive, and they hang chandeliers outside on the like hanging from these palm trees, like
as you do.
Yeah, exactly. Why wouldn't you? So that I think is when people are thinking Hollywood. That's probably more what is the actual picture that is in their head. Anyway, not to burst anybody's bubble, but Hollywood does have like the stars on the ground.
They are real.
And the Oscars are held in Hollywood, like at Hollywood and Highland in this one area. But in reality, like people avoid Hollywood.
But
they actually live there.
Okay, but what is then in Hollywood? What Hollywood contains then? If
so
there is no headquarters, no so much studio.
Yeah, Hollywood has Hollywood, like that strip of Hollywood, like literally on Hollywood Way, has or Hollywood Boulevard has Mann's Chinese Theater, which is a famous movie theater, and out in front on the ground, there's like footprints of actors in the cement with their signatures. So it's a lot of stuff that people are drawn to because they like celebrityism.
Okay, I understand.
And so I think actually that's maybe a better way to put it, is Hollywood is more about the celebration of celebrityism,
tourist
which
attractions.
I'm not into celebrityism. Like, so it feels a little icky to me anyway. And it's such a draw for tourists. I mean, I get it. Like if it's your first time to LA, you kind of have to do it. You have to go there. You have to experience it. But I feel like probably most people walk away going, that's not exactly what I thought it was.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, to put it in the simple words, in Hollywood there is the glamour, it's full of the glamourism or celebrityism, and it has its tourist attractions. But real movie business happens in Burbank. The real, let's say, not so glamorous.
The magic happens in Burbank.
Yeah, the magic, but not so glamorous magic. The real thing.
And the other thing I think that people have a misconception about, even just working in the film industry in that area, is that, and Burbank again is where a lot of the people who make the films live. And just because you've been on TV a few times, or even you're a recognizable actor, doesn't mean that you're a billionaire and drive a Rolls Royce. Like you just have a normal life. You have a family. You live in Burbank in a reasonable, normal house.
Yeah, and reasonable.
It's just you know what I mean? Yeah. It's your job. Like we have a lot of friends who are actors. They live on our street, and people will recognize them, but they're just like everybody else. I mean,
they're just famous. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, they take their kids to school and they deal with normal sort of domestic, everyday things. So that's another thing that people I think, don't understand, is that all of these people are really just people. I mean, there's certain people that live in Beverly Hills and are like on another planet, you know, but for the most part, the people who are making the movies just have normal lives. It's just that they have this amazing opportunity to like produce things that the world sees.
It's one of those rare jobs where fame is kind of a part of the job, and people put you on a pedestal sometimes, not because of because of course because of the quality of your work, but also just because you're recognizable, and then they make up stories about you. Like you said, people they have a wrong notion of what your life actually is, that it's really much closer to everybody else's. Just their work is
100%.
Yeah.
It's just the work that you're doing is so visible, and everybody has an opinion about you.
Yeah,
and like what you do.
You need to have an audience, right?
Yes.
You are making that for.
The other really interesting thing is you have to be very careful when you're talking about films and like what you like, what you don't like. If you're in the industry, I think we tend to be a lot more. First of all, because we know how hard it is to make the films and how up and down and, you know, the whole process is, that we're very careful about how we talk about films that we like or don't like. First of all, somebody may be listening who worked on the film, or like you may not realize it, but maybe the cameraman or the cinematographer or whatever is like sitting in the audience or like sitting in the booth next to you at a coffee shop. So, you know, that's a different vibe too. Is you're very cautious about how you talk about things.
Respectful to.
You're very respectful.
To each film because
yeah, and honestly, if there's something that you don't like, you also kind of have a little bit more empathy, I think, for that person, because everybody's been through really difficult shows, and it's really hard to make, and frankly it's kind of a miracle that anything gets made at all, much less some of it is decent. You know what I mean? It's a very difficult craft. So
yeah, I believe. And when you mentioned that creating a movie, it's a very hard thing to do. No matter will the film be good or bad, it's in a general one long and hard working process. But how do you handle that uncertainty that you are during the filmmaking? You are totally not sure how it will be accepted by the audience, by the critical reviews, or
how good the sureness
or how good the film be in general. So how do you motivate yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's very true. I mean, you know, animated films in particular, they take about 4 years. So you're working very hard, very long. You can't really talk about them. Nobody's seeing what you're doing. So you're kind of in a vacuum. Like nobody is really giving you feedback except other people working on the film. Yeah. And so you don't know if it's good. I mean, sometimes you feel like it's good if it is good, but sometimes you have real questions about it, or things that are very specific. You're like, I don't think this works, or you know. But every project goes through this. Like, you know, the world loves Frozen, and I'll never. I mean, every project you get to a certain point where it's like, you also can't see it anymore. Like you're just living it so much that you just don't know if it's working or if people are going to understand it, or does this look good, or you question things all the time. So it's extremely gratifying when you actually put it out there and people do like it. Frozen in particular, because everybody and their uncle and
mother,
like everybody has seen it.
Yeah.
But I remember before release, like I was working around the clock on Frozen, and it was a very difficult movie. They're all difficult, but Frozen was very difficult. And not knowing if people were going to like it or not, and finishing the film, and then it coming out and people really loving it. And literally within a month, I was in Paris for, I can't even remember what. But I walk into the Disney store on the Champs-Élysées, and it is wall-to-wall Frozen stuff. And there's already like little girls walking around in Anna and Elsa dresses. And it is just so trippy to have worked on something that nobody had seen a month before, and you weren't even sure if it was going to work.
Yeah.
And then now the world just has embraced it, and you see kids just loving it and like being obsessed with it. It's just a very bizarre, surreal experience.
You come to a podcast and there's Olaf waiting for you.
I know. It's so trippy. It's so trippy. I think, you know, in animation, there's certain films I feel like where if you worked on a particular film, that's almost like written on your tombstone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that, you are attached to that. For a couple generations, that was the Lion King.
Of course.
Like if people worked on the Lion King, like if you knew somebody or somebody, it's like, that person, they worked on the Lion King.
Yeah,
I think no matter what in my career, it'll probably be Frozen.
You'll never escape Frozen.
You'll never, not that I even want to, but it's just that thing. It's like people say Frozen and like everybody knows it.
Yeah. But it's a good thing, right?
It's a good thing. It's just a very surreal thing because when you're working on it, you're doing your best. You can't have expectations that it's going to do what it did,
Seeing Frozen, now I gotta know, why did you think that it's maybe not gonna work out?
Well, so one thing also that not everybody knows about making animated features, especially at Disney, like we are very, very picky, like very nitpicky. I often say this, but I wish that I could bring somebody to Disney and have them sit in a review room.
We're here. Okay.
And watch how we give notes, because I think their minds would be blown. We are picking apart every little detail. We watch a shot. A shot is like, could be a second. We will watch it over and over and over, and we will pick it apart. And that shot will go through many, many changes, even though it's only maybe 24 frames long. Like it's so short, but we are that level of obsessed with it. And so I think that kind of breeds a certain is this going to work? Because you're so critical all the time because you want it to be good. Yeah. But the other thing that people should know is that, like I said, they take 4 years to make, and almost every feature, about a year before its release, has some kind of major rewrite, catastrophe, like something happens where you've been living with this film for so long.
For 3 years minimum.
3 years minimum. And you suddenly realize, like, people start asking the question, like, what is this movie about again? Like, I feel like we've kind of lost our way. Like, it happens on every film. So you're constantly second guessing and questioning. And a lot of times things have to get reworked. Zootopia was a film that I'm very proud. I actually, so I was part of senior, studio leadership during that period. So technically I was involved to some degree in every feature from 2007 to 2020. But I can say I'm kind of proud of Zootopia because I think it's actually a really good movie and has a really good kind of message and theme, and it's entertaining. Like, I think it checks a lot of boxes. But that film had a major change about a year before its release. And we threw a lot of stuff away that had already been made. And it was kind of in crisis mode. Like every film kind of gets into this crisis mode. Like now we to make it great, we realize we have to do these major changes. Can we do this in this amount of time? And Frozen went through it, Tangled went through it, Zootopia went through it. Like all the films go through that. So I think that's one reason. It's a super long answer, but this is one reason why I think...
This is what the podcast is for.
Okay. I think this is one reason why when it's done, you're like, does it work? Like you just don't... You're not sure because you've made so many macro and micro adjustments.
You have like 100 visions of the film.
There's so many different versions of the movie. And actually, that's a really good point too, is there are times where you're like, wait, do we still have this scene in the movie, or did we get rid of that scene?
You're not even sure.
You're not even sure. Like, is this still in, or So, again, it's messy. You know, people see the final version, and that's the only version they ever see.
For people,
but we
but
see
for
like all the messy variations, and when it really didn't work, and you get kind of sour on certain moments, like this isn't working at all.
Yeah, this will be a catastrophe.
Yeah, exactly.
You go depressed.
Exactly. It happens on every film.
Yeah. Who decides which scenes are gonna go in or out? Who is the main voice? Like, okay, we have to.
So this is a very particular thing, I think, to Pixar and Disney films. So both studios, we call them director-driven studios. Okay. So unlike some studios, which are, I would say, more executive-driven or like more producer-driven studios, these are director-driven studios, at least in theory. No, I'm good. Okay. So the director, or honestly, most of the films have directors, like 2 or 3. The process is this. We do what's called an animatic. So we storyboard out the entire film. And we cut it together, we edit it together, we add dialogue, sound, scratch music, whatever. And we show the entire film in that version. And to at least all the leadership in the studio for feedback, whether they're working on the film or not. And then we get in a room, it's called the Brain Trust. So all the directors and senior leadership who might be on other shows sit in that room. And in the case of, like Frozen and Tangled, John Lasseter, Ed Catmull, like the heads of the studio. And it's a round table of just like breaking down the movie. Like what is working, what is not working, fresh eyes, because people haven't seen it. They haven't worked on it.
Yeah, that's the good thing.
It's a good thing. Yeah, it's difficult if you're the director and you've been like trying to get this made, and for all the people who've been like,
and they're tearing it apart.
That like, but so that first screening is always a disaster. The first screening is always off. It's terrible. Like you don't think this is going to work at all. But hopefully some really good stuff comes out of it, and you think, oh, well, what if we did this, or what if we got rid of that character, and like everything is on the table in those discussions. Okay. Yeah. Then after that, you work on another version of the animatic. So you usually rewrite the script, and then probably 3 months or so later, you do the next version of the movie in that same animatic form. Ideally, through the course of the film being made, you have 8 or 10 of those screenings. And usually by the 3rd, hopefully, or 4th screening, you're actually greenlighting sequences, like sections of the movie, to go into production. You think, these are working, they're not going to change, we feel really good about them. The person who actually does that in the case of those films is John Lasseter.
Okay.
So he I mean, obviously, the directors, the producer, like it's a discussion, but and even going into the screening, usually there'll be a discussion among senior leadership on the show. It's like, which ones do we think we should push for? So there might be like 5 in a film. There might be 25 to 30 sequences. So in screening 3, you're hoping to maybe get 5 sequences. Maybe you'll only get 2 that get greenlit, but they have to get into production. Then the machine starts. You start building everything. You start actually animating. Start making everything. By 4, 5, 6, 7 screenings, now hopefully the majority of the movie is now into production. But that's also sometimes where some of those sequences that you thought were golden and you didn't want to touch, and maybe you've already finished, actually you realize to solve some bigger problems that still exist, you have to go back and change them, or you might have to lose them. So it's a messy, complicated, very collaborative process, but I think it yields the best films when it's done well,
with all those filters and going backs and
yes, so there's a lot of like checks and balances, which again, with the wrong group of people, it can be bad. Like it can feel like there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. You know that phrase, where it's like, who's actually running this thing? Who's driving the ship? And like, so the directors still have to it has to still fit with their vision. And to be honest, there are some projects where the director has a vision and the notes point it in a really different direction, and it becomes a thing where it's like the director may say, I'm not feeling this anymore. Like, this is not the movie that I wanted to make. And they may leave. They may decide, I'm not making this anymore. or they may be asked to leave.
Yeah,
You know, it may be like, okay, this really is the movie that we need to make, and the version that you were kind of had a vision for, we're seeing holes in it that are just not going to work. We don't think they're going to work. So it's difficult. I mean, it can be really challenging. But
In any case, it's not a linear process.
Yeah,
so
not at all.
it is not a linear process. Not
And-
at all.
Yeah.
I think some studios, it is more linear. And I actually, like during that period where I was meeting with a lot of studios, I literally had like studio heads tell me, we're just like Disney or Pixar. We just don't make as many notes. Like we just decide it's fine. Like it's okay. We just keep going. And so that's like a really positive thing. But for me as a creator, it's not really. Like I'd rather it be painful but great than kind of easy sliding and
Easy going.
at the end it's like
only good.
doesn't turn out that great. It's like okay.
Yeah,
you know, it's just fine.
Totally
Mediocre.
understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally understand. Yeah, in Disney there is much more attention to details and much more of the perfectionism.
Yes.
If I understood you.
I do think that, and I'm as guilty as anyone, I do think maybe we go about 15% too far into like the critique.
I understand.
Because honestly, you do get to a point with every shot that you're like, look, the only people who are even going to notice a change are the people in this room. Like, is it really worth doing this for that? Because
Like, can you get
what's the
stuck on
point?
perfectionism?
100%. I think you
Absolutely.
can. And when you are a perfectionist, I struggle with that. It's hard to let things go. And then it's actually, when you're done with the movie, it's hard to watch it.
Of course.
Yeah, after all you
because
passed
you're
through.
like, all you see are the things that
Don't work.
don't
Shouldn't
work.
But only in your head.
Didn't quite get the way you wanted. Like it just, it's hard. You need some space. You need some time to pass before you actually can watch it and just be okay.
Understand. Well, when you were talking about that, you remember me to the one famous phrase of the Winston Churchill. It's a little bit off topic, but he said that man needs to be careful that better becomes the enemy of the very good,
Yes.
Not only good but very good.
Yes.
Yes, he said that phrase, and of course you need to strive to be better and better, but it's also the skill to, let's say, draw a line. Let's say this is enough close to the perfect that we can go out with, because nothing ever will be perfect. Nothing in this world it's perfect, but we can be very, very close to perfect.
And you have to shoot for the best.
Yeah.
But then, like you said, you have to know when, it's reached the point where it's like we have to move on and it's good.
It is,
and even knowing what that is
hard. How do you know what
it's
it is?
not an objective thing, you know.
It's
and you don't want to be second guessing yourself, like people didn't like the movie. Maybe it was because of that. Like if they just did it, the way that we talked about. Anyway.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of second guessing.
All the time,
and
all the time.
And in this regard, we mentioned many roles currently, and groups of people who are making different decisions. So in Disney, in particular, how many people are included totally in making of one movie?
Yeah, so
some broad.
Yeah, so generally speaking, usually 400 to 500 people.
400 to 500. It's a team. It's a team who is.
It is a team. It is the most collaborative medium, I think. Animation, in particular, is the most collaborative. And I think also a lot of people have misconceptions about who does what. Like they would say, "How is it possible that there's 400 people who worked on this movie?" Like, how's it even broken down? Like, are there 400 animators on the movie? And the reality is, in these kinds of films, it takes a lot of people with very different expertise to actually collaborate to make the thing. So, for example, I think people don't always understand this. Like an animator on these films actually has nothing to do with the look of the movie. They don't design the characters. They have nothing to do with the aesthetic. They are purely, and I'm not saying this isn't amazing, like this is obviously super important, but they are specifically for performance animation. They are character performance. They are actors. They receive the puppet and they make the puppet move, and then they hand it off. So people, when they hear animators, and frankly, when people ask me like what my job is, sometimes it's just easier to just be like, I'm an animator, like whatever. Like it doesn't, it's enough because it's not worth getting into all the specifics. And I've done a lot of different things, and I have been an animator like specifically on projects, but the reality is it takes very different people. You know, there's writers, then you have storyboard artists, like that's a very specific thing in that part of the process.
Sorry, does the storyboard artist give the notion of what the look of the film is going to be like?
Yeah, so no, actually, no.
Okay.
So I can kind of quickly hit the high notes of what goes into it. So you start with a script. The storyboard artist's job is to take the script and visualize it. Like come up with a version of the movie in like simple rough drawings to communicate a version of what that script is. And they're given sequences, so they work on just a sequence, you know. And they will work with the director specifically and the head of story to craft that vision. But a lot of times the characters aren't designed at that point. There's like the environments are not designed.
It's like sticks maybe.
It's very rough. It's very simple.
Open for interpretation.
They are putting in their best guess at like where the camera would be in this shot, like how to tell the story in a very basic, rough way. What happens after that? So first of all, story artists need to cannot be precious about their work. They are redrawing things thousands of times. Like that's the messiest stage. I mean, a lot of it is messy, but that is a stage where you're like iterating, trying a lot of things. So the other really big difference between animation and live action filmmaking, and I tell this to my students all the time, is that in live action, the script is the blueprint. In animation, it's not. In animation, the animatic is the blueprint. And the animatic is that cut together storyboard version of the movie. And that is because when you go from the script and then you do this visualization of it, a lot of things can change. In fact, things can be added by the story artist. They can have ideas about a way to do something, or even dialogue, like things that a character says or doesn't say. Like they can reshape that. So they're not 100% bound to the script. Okay, which is that's a kind of an unusual thing, but it's so important because, like I said, when we watch the movie in its fully animatic form, it feels like the movie. Even though it's like chicken scratch kind of drawing sometimes, you know, like you watch an hour and a half or 2 hour version of this movie just with those drawings, but you know if it works or not, and it can be just as emotional as the final version of the film.
Oh yeah.
Like you'll feel the emotion when it's working, and when it's not working, you know it's not working. Okay, so that's why I think it's the blueprint of making an animated film, because once that is set, then you go into, now usually it's happening sort of in parallel at this point. You have character designers and environment designers. They are specifically responsible for working with the production designer, who's like the top art director of the film, who has a vision for what the movie looks like and is reading the script and trying to visualize what these characters look like. And they're doing tons of iterations. Character designs, like every character will be drawn hundreds of times. and variations of it, and then notes and revisions and notes and revisions. So that is happening in the art department while the story team is going. Then you get to, let's say you've got the character bought off, like this is the character. We like this version of the character. Now somebody's got to go make it, okay, in CG, like on the computer. So then you have 3D modelers. So they are basically like sculptors in the computer who are very gifted at defining in like dimension what that drawing looks like and what they will look like in the film. You have a whole other team so they only model the character, they create the form, but they're not responsible for like the texture or the surfacing or like the materials. That's a whole other department. So you have a whole other department that is just like painting textures and like, this is what skin should look like, and this is what the hair should look like, and this is what cloth should look like, and doing all all of that work. Okay.
This is why there's 400.
This is why there's 400 people.
Very.
And at that point, the character can't move. They're still just static. So now you need another team that is the rigging team to come in and put bones inside the body so that now it can be animated. So now, after all of that process, then you get the animators involved. I even skipped a whole other process, which is layout. There's so many different phases. When the animator gets it, the shot is already set up. It's almost like they walk onto the set, like a live action set, and they're the actor. But the environment's there. The clothes are already on. They're walking out onto stage, and they are performing. And that's their part. And then they're done. And then it goes to lighting and effects and like these other. So it's a massive team with everybody has to be the best at what they do and collaborate to make something that is great at the end. That's why you have 400 people.
Yeah, you have detailed, let's say, division of the responsibility, the division of the work. So everybody works, especially on the things that he's best, and leaves other to the rest.
And people do their entire academic careers just targeting that one job,
one aspect.
And it's so competitive. You have, hundreds and hundreds of people vying for like one open spot.
Just one specialized open spot.
We have a seat available for one person to be a rigger on this show. And so you might hire people and you'll get 300 resumes, 300 portfolios, and you've got one spot to fill.
And I assume that they are very, very good resumes.
They have to be. They have to be the top at what they do.
Thank you for this explanation, because now it makes much more sense when you say that even the final product, it's purely magic that was even made.
Gets made.
So even if it's made,
The other thing that also people don't really understand is the director on an animated film doesn't actually see most of the steps that get taken.
He's
really
high-level manager.
The director, honestly, in a huge feature film, like feature animated film, the director usually sees the work when the leadership team in that specific department has already iterated so many times and got it to the place that they think it's done. Okay? That's when the director sees it.
Comes in,
And so...
When does he give the notes? Sorry for interrupting.
At that stage. So it's kind of become sort of a joke in different departments, especially like in lighting, for example. That's the final thing that shows up on the screen, is lighting actually brings in all the color and mood and atmosphere to a shot. Okay? And 90% of the time, at least, the director sees it and is just so in awe of what it looks like that there's no notes. So like they haven't seen the iterations that shot has gone through in lighting. So it's spent like a shot might take 2 or 3 weeks and it's getting iterated, and there's like 8 different versions that have been like tweaked and notes and all these things that the director has not had any involvement in. They see the final shot and it's like, wow, guys, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Next.
Literally,
exactly.
Bad,
and I'm not downplaying the value of that. What I'm trying to do is elevate the artistry that happens at all of these different levels. Because, and think about it practically, like the director's job really is going from review room to review room at seeing things at all points of the process and like coming in and saying, is this still hitting the vision?
Yeah, understand.
They can't be in the trenches. They can't be in the decisions every little thing.
That would lead to the so-called micromanagement, and which is, at least from my experience from the software development industry, it's not a good thing. When the highest level manager want to know every details, want to interrupt.
Yes, usually the director, if there is a note for like that kind of stage, it's because they don't think that the story point is quite clear enough. So like, for example, if the story point is really, we need the audience to see that box on the screen. Like that box has like something written on it. That is like a story point. If for some reason it's like too much in shadow or something, they won't even know necessarily the terms to use, but they'll just say, I just wish that box was a little bit more clear. And so then the lighting team will be like, how should we resolve that? Like, should we use color? Should we have it a little bit more in light? Or should we like frame it a little bit differently?
Or
physics work? A little bit, whatever. It could be any number of different solutions. So usually that's the, if there is a note, that's the kind of note it is. Directors do spend a lot more time with the storyboard team because that is all about like, are we telling the story? And with the animation team, which is doing the character performance, because you want to make sure that the actors are performing
in accordance
the
with
right way.
vision,
like they're communicating, this is who this character is, this is the information they need to reveal at this point. This is the emotion that needs to be shown. So those are the two parts that the directors have their hands in the most. But most of the other departments, there's 1,000 different decisions in every shot that are happening, and they usually just see the like completed version,
the output of that process. And that's understandable because we have, like you said, very big team and very big business process of making it all. So it's impossible for one man to know everything about.
And also
about
why
each
you
segment.
often have multiple directors, because a lot of times you'll have one director. Like when things get really crazy and things get really compressed in terms of time, you'll have one director who's focused more on what we call the front end. Like if there's still story issues, they'll be focused on that, where the other director will be in reviews for like the back end, like the things that are actually in production, making sure that things are working. Because they just can't be in all the places all the time.
Even at that high level.
And hopefully the directors, again, they can be 2, they can be 3. You know, Moana had 5. Because when things get really compressed in terms of time, you need somebody going into those review rooms and saying, yes, that's working, or no, whatever. So they have to divide and conquer.
Okay, and then they work as an equal team, or they have, let's say, some kind of leading director, if you understand what I mean.
Sometimes they are just both directors. Let's say there's 2. Sometimes there's just both directors. There's no director, co-director. Co-director is considered like
one step lower,
like one step below,
first officer on the ship.
Yes. So, like in the case where there were 5 directors on a show, I think in that case there were 2 or 3 directors and 2 co-directors. I mean, it gets, but
there are many situations.
Yeah, but often. You will have, not always, but if you have 2 directors, you'll often have somebody who their discipline, when they were in the trenches and working on shots, was in story or in animation or something. And so, like, something specific. Nobody rolls out of school and is like directing a Disney feature.
Absolutely.
Like they go up through a department.
Through the levels.
They go through the levels in a particular discipline. And then at some point somebody says, hey, that person's really good at like seeing the big picture and telling a really compelling story, and I think they'd kind of be well suited to this. And so that person, you usually won't have like two people who came up through story being the two directors.
From the same background.
You'll usually have some kind of balance of like somebody maybe from the front end, somebody maybe from the back end, so that when it does have to kind of split up, they know what they're doing in those areas.
It's interesting how that works in a Disney movie, because when I hear like 2 or 3 directors in a live action film, that sounds like a nightmare. It's like somebody's gonna die.
Well, and it is different, in live action, because again, not always, but a lot of there's less people generally, and the directors are more present for all more of that stuff. Like they may be actually behind the camera
at all times,
like shooting, working directly with the actors, going into editorial. Like there's less levels, there's less decisions, like 1,000 decisions being made elsewhere.
Because you have so many little pieces working on a Disney film that I had no idea existed.
So it's very, very complex, I see.
Very complex.
Small village of people working.
Small village. Really.
Yeah.
My home village have 5 times less population, only 100. So
they have no chance.
It takes 5 of my
5 villages to make
animation.
Yeah.
This is why we have we don't have a lot of films
because we have small villages.
Having said that, like that's a Disney animated film.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest company, or maybe the biggest.
I mean, these are like $180 million budgets. Like they're massive. That doesn't mean they're the best. Like I actually am a fan of much simpler projects. Like I'm a fan of more independent, stripped down, simpler films. I mean, I always say, like, I'm a filmmaker first. I happen to do animation, but I just love good film, whatever it is. And I actually really appreciate films that have very small budgets, but are very well crafted and tell a very good story. Like those are actually personally my favorite films, more than like the giant blockbusters. Like I actually find most of them boring. So
this is why Godzilla -1 was such a great hit.
Yeah, Godzilla -1 was one of those. See, and I'm not a big like action person, really. But I thought that film, it told a compelling story. The effects were amazing, and the fact that like the person
director
who
worked on
was phenomenal. I mean, I voted for that. Now that it's out, I can share like what I voted for. I voted for that for best visual effects, because it's not just if the visual effects were the best for me. It's knowing like what that team was able to accomplish, considering the challenges, the budget, like, is phenomenal, and they deserve the accolade.
And they won.
They won.
They won.
Absolutely. And you should especially understand that, because you made the Mantis Parable all by yourself.
I think that.
So I think that's why you respect that even more.
I think I have a little bias towards that, because I get the like person in their garage trying to do something great, and all the challenges and obstacles, and I just find that. I mean, again, every film is a miracle in some way that it gets made, whether it's a Disney film or the Mantis Parable or Godzilla -1. I think I appreciate when I see something just really well done. There's a film, I mean, I have so many films I could share, talk about.
I'm sure.
But like in my classes, I have an extra credit film every week that I have my students watch. They can watch it and write up a little paper on it. I'll give them extra credit.
For bonus,
Yeah. And actually, even though it's an animation class, more than half of them are live action. And some of it is because, first of all, I just want to expose them to films that they haven't seen
yet,
but one of these films is a Scandinavian film that was made a few years ago called The Guilty. Okay?
I'm not sure that we...
So The Guilty...
We watched The Hunt, but it's not the same.
A lot of people don't. So it was shortlisted for the Academy Award for Best International Film. I think it was Denmark's submission.
How did you say the name of the film again?
The Guilty.
Creep.
The Guilty.
The Guilty.
The entire film takes place in a 911, like, you have 911, like, or like emergency.
Emergency service,
In an emergency call center. Mm-hmm. And it's focused on one character, and the camera is on them the whole time. And the film never leaves that room. And it is a thriller. Like, you're on the edge of your seat. So much of it is done by like him on the, like, hearing the person on the other line who you never see. Mm-hmm. Super small budget.
Yeah.
The film is phenomenal. Like, it is so good. So good, in fact, that when it was nominated for international film, I went to an Academy screening of it, and I made a point to talk with the directors and the actor who was in it, like the filmmakers. And I actually brought them to Disney, and we screened the film at Disney, and including for 3 editors at Disney. And after the film, these editors were like, "This is the best edited film I've ever seen. Like, it is so well crafted." And the budget was super small. And this was their first film out of school that they made. So
for the first film went...
So these are the kind of films that I just obsess over, because they're so unique. And like, they used the challenges that they had and made something
extraordinary.
Yeah, I think you probably know the phrase, limitations breeds creativity.
Yeah. That's how Jaws was made.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Shark wasn't working.
I love those kinds of films where they had limitations, but they're like, okay, well, I think we can tell an amazing story where we only stay in this emergency call center. And I think we can make it thrilling and compelling. And they totally did. So like, those kinds of films for me are just magical.
Okay, we need to watch that movie.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Now, do not watch the one that is on Netflix.
Okay.
That is the American version.
We have the American and the Denmark version.
The Denmark version is the one you want to see.
Okay.
And I don't want to get into a ton.
Yeah.
But the American version is, my opinion, a very Americanized version of that movie. And literally the first shot I saw, I was at the screening, like at the screening in New York with the filmmakers of the American version. And the very first shot I saw, I was like, they ruined it.
Really? From the first
shot on the screen, I'm like, nope. Yeah. They blew it.
Yeah, it's normal that original is better than the copy.
It is.
In most situations.
This one is especially a sore point for me because it's like, to me, they missed the point of what made the first one so great.
Wow, with the first frame.
You understood what this.
And if you watch the Danish one, and then you watch the American one, you'll know. You should do that.
First we need to watch the Danish one.
Yes, you will see the opening shot and just be like,
that was Josh speaking.
I know why he said that.
Okay.
We should do that as an exercise.
And I have one question regarding when you mentioned how complex is to make the movie and everything, how tedious and detailed the process is. Then how many, in average, and also you mentioned that you teach at the South California University. So I would like to ask you, how many hours per week do you work? It's a little bit different questions, but I think it's...
So, that is a good question. So, technically, in America, if you're working for a studio like Disney, you're part of the animation union. Yes. So they dictate the number of hours that you are allowed to work. Like, they're protecting the employee, they're protecting the artist, right? So at Disney, the deal was 45-hour work week.
Okay, that's bigger than average from a start, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, 45 hours. However, so basically what that's saying is if you work longer than that, you're going to get paid overtime.
Yeah. Okay.
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 You're going to paid like time and a half.
Yeah. Like in Croatia,
The studios don't want to pay you overtime. They don't want you to work more than that. So you have to ask if you're going to do anything more than the 45 hours. Having said that, the reality is every film gets behind. So everybody ends up working a lot more hours. And at a certain point, it's just like, we just got to get the movie done. So they just end up having to throw money at people and just like get it done. And they end up hiring a lot more people. This is another thing. Usually, like, the animation department and the lighting department are the two biggest departments in an animation studio. So usually you have about 50 animators and 50 lighters on staff.
Wow.
Okay? By the end of the film, you usually have over 100 animators and 100 lighters working on the movie.
It doubles.
It doubles because the film falls behind and you need to hire a bunch of people. And so they hire a bunch of people, which causes a lot of problems because you got to train up those people because maybe they haven't worked the way you do. Maybe the quality isn't as high, but you're just needing to get these people to get shots done. So that also, it becomes just like a crazy time at the end of the film to get it done.
So
There's a lot more hours. Now, the other thing is, not to get too technical, but if you're in leadership on a film, so I was in leadership after Bolt. Like after my first film, on Tangled, I became leadership for the rest of my time at Disney. And I have what's called a buyout, which means that they pay me a certain amount no matter how many hours I worked.
You just need to realize.
I have to get the movie done.
Yeah. You need to job. It's your how many
which
hours.
Can be great when things are slow. Things are very rarely slow, and so you just work like a crazy person. Like you just have to work a lot.
Yeah.
At least like Monday through Friday, you're basically just working as many hours as you need to, which can be a lot of hours.
So we are speaking about 50, 60 or
oh,
more.
No, you're talking 70, 80 hours a week.
Oh, so double work week. Because
it becomes a lot.
80 hours work week.
When do you sleep?
Where do I sleep?
Where?
Not, thankfully, never in my office, but there's actually one reason why we chose to live in Burbank.
Yeah, it's nearby.
Because it's 2 miles from the studio.
Yeah. So that's a good thing.
If I lived anywhere further away, I would like never see my family. So thankfully, I didn't work too many 70 or 80 hour weeks. Like I really did try to balance my time as much as possible. But towards the end of a project, it does get
it's understandable,
crazy and not great.
And you also, in parallel with that, you also teach. It also takes some amount of your work week. Or...
Yeah, so I started teaching at USC when I was still at Disney, but I was just an adjunct then, which means I only am teaching one class a semester. Okay. I left Disney to go to Netflix. And honestly, one of the reasons why I did that is because I have my own project that I was starting to develop. And I realized there's no way I could do the Disney thing and develop this and teach adjunct. So went to Netflix, continued to teach. And then when my project started getting traction, like it started getting interest from studios, and it was clear like I need to focus on this, then I left Netflix. And now my work life is very different than it used to be, because now I'm full-time at USC. However, I was able to talk with USC about, because they had wanted me to go full-time, I was able to talk with them about like, what could this look like? Because I really do need to pursue, this project. And so our arrangement is I'm full-time, but I only teach 2 classes, and I put them both on Mondays. So I'm there on Mondays, and I do work. I mean, I'm kind of always on call if students need something. I'm helping them. I'm doing drawovers. I'm whatever. But generally speaking, I work at USC on Mondays, and then I'm consulting on a big project for Warner Brothers. So that takes another period of time, and then the rest of that time, in theory, I'm able to work on my own project. Okay. So now it's very different, and it's a lot healthier actually.
Yeah, mentally and physically.
Literally, my job now is I get up most mornings and I ride my bike to a coffee shop. I ride about 20 or 30 miles a day, nice. But I ride to a coffee shop. I sit and I work from there, usually writing, like screenwriting for my show, or doing student stuff like, emailing students or whatever.
Yeah, I understand.
Then I ride home, and then in the afternoon, I'm usually doing my consulting work or other kind of animation work for my project. So it's a freelance, more kind of lifestyle, which is just a lot.
Suits you more.
More relaxed.
I didn't realize it would, but it does. And thankfully, USC has been so great. And I love teaching and mentoring so much that almost doesn't feel, I mean, it's a lot of work, but it doesn't feel like work. And it isn't as taxing.
For Disney and had that experience also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I feel like my work-life balance is radically better.
Yeah.
But, if I hadn't already put in my 20-something years of crazy in the industry, I wouldn't have the opportunity to teach at USC like I do. And I wouldn't have the opportunity to be consulting, for Warner Brothers. So I feel like I'm kind of at a place now where I'm able to reap the benefits of like a lot of work that I put in for 25 years, and just kind of put it more into things that I'm really passionate about,
It gives you that freedom to do
that.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice that your hard work
we're really happy
returned.
Thank you.
Something. Okay. I think we can now talk a little bit about the animation and filming industry in general. I think we covered your career and your particular works in very detail. So I would like to ask you, because I'm an IT guy, so these questions come as totally natural. What do you think is the impact of the artificial intelligence, all those developments in that context on the animation industry?
Yeah, I have a lot of strong feelings about this, about AI.
Please share.
Share.
I mean, I feel like this could be its own podcast.
Totally. But we had one episode about artificial intelligence, more than 3 hours, more than Titanic.
Yeah, I mean, I see it from a few different perspectives. I see it from a creator of artwork, like just as an artist myself. I see it as a professor and like what it means for my students. So just on the creative side, I am a strong believer in not taking shortcuts. Like I feel that there's certain fundamental things to be a good artist that you have to do that are not the fun, exciting things. Like there's not that many people who want to learn perspective or anatomy and do that over and over and over and over again. For my students, I call it like it's the eating your vegetables part. And it's not even just the learning of that skill that is important. I think it actually, the process teaches you how to think, like how to solve problems, and even how to tell stories, like how to compose a shot. Like all these things I think take time to actually get good at. And actually how to connect something as abstract as like the composition of a shot to a story idea. Like, why is that going to work? It's a kind of it feels like it's maybe a little ambiguous or nebulous, but I actually think it's pretty direct. I think it's pretty directly related to like the hours that you put in to do those certain things. So that's one part. And I see it from students. It's hard enough to get them to do that and see the value in those kinds of things. But especially with AI, when they see AI being used as a shortcut, like I could just jump to a final image.
You can just,
I can just go to that thing. I feel like it's a temptation that they don't want to do that stuff. Mm-hmm. Two, I'm going to stay on the student part. I think it creates a lot of fear in students today because they wonder if there's going to be opportunities for them.
Yeah, and what do you think about that?
When they graduate?
Will it take some part of the jobs? Or
I think it will. I think it will take some jobs, which kind of leads me to a different concern that I have, which is the people giving the jobs are studio executives, and I know a lot of great studio executives, but I know a lot that aren't that great and aren't actually great storytellers and are not necessarily the greatest arbiter of what is great quality. I tend to think that the artists are the ones who recognize when it's like reached the level that it's working. And my concern is that many executives who are also under a ton of pressure will, I was talking about when I first got into the industry, I met with a lot of studio executives who are like, we're not Disney and Pixar because we just don't iterate as much, or we just don't make as many notes, right? Well, when a studio or a studio executive is under a ton of pressure, there's a temptation there to just be like, let's just go the shortcut route.
Yeah.
And frankly, like I said, I think honestly, given two images to an executive, if they're like, one was the AI, one was done by this artist, they may not be the best evaluator of like which is the best one, like which one works to tell the story best. Mm-hmm. And I have a concern about that because for them, if they see them as being the same, then it undervalues what the artist is actually bringing. So the result of that, in my mind, is not only does the value of artists, the perception of the value of artists go down, but you're also watering down the overall quality of content out there. Yeah. Because a lot of things get made without the kind of depth and creativity that I think should be put into these projects. We had this terrible writer's strike in America, and it was very long and very painful. And like I said, my neighborhood is filled with writers who didn't have jobs for a long time. And I don't know if you guys ever saw some of these picketers, literally all through Burbank. It was picketers everywhere. And one of my favorites was a writer had written on her sign, ChatGPT doesn't have my childhood trauma. It's like they don't have they don't have it doesn't have the personal soul like the experience that I have. I can use metaphor to tell this story because I have experienced something like this. I've lived through it, and it's going to feel authentic
and
because
be unique.
Of that.
You have your unique experience and unique creativity. But the artificial intelligence, it has just skill of replicating. It cannot create anything new from scratch.
Well, and actually, so I think, I'm going to say something maybe I shouldn't, but, I worked at Netflix, and I think Netflix has a lot of great stuff. But Netflix, more than any other studio that I have seen, is driven by analytics.
By the hard
by
data.
The numbers.
By the data, by the numbers.
Yeah.
And those numbers those numbers come from things that have already been made. They greenlight projects based on, not always, but I've been in discussions with Netflix executives where they are always looking at the comps. They're looking at the comparative projects and trying to see like what the numbers will be for this project, and this project can be greenlit because it's so similar to these, or it's like a combination of this one that did well and this one that did well.
They look at the formula that already works and they want to replicate it.
Yes, which to me, the problem with that is that you can never create anything truly new and original. Yep. If you're only pointing to stuff that's already been made as the reference for if you should make something or not.
Yeah.
You're always looking at the stuff that's already there.
Yeah.
And I think in some way AI is sort of the embodiment of that.
Yeah, AI
it's looking
exactly
at
from
exactly
it's,
that.
it's
technically
looking at
exactly that.
It's looking at stuff that's already out there and repackaging it and presenting it as something new, but it's still derivative. It's still based on something that's already, or a
Made a
combination of stuff that already has been made and exists.
Yeah, replication.
So I just think you run the risk of less kind of originality.
Absolutely, absolutely agree. It's technically totally correct.
Yeah. I have another concern, which is copyright infringement.
That's a huge problem now with AI. Yeah.
Because artists, I mean, you see it clearly that artists' work, first of all, it's being put into databases without their knowledge permission.
Knowledge, yeah.
To the point where now you can generate art using AI by pointing at an artist, saying, I want it to look like that. And yet that artist had no say in no control over how their art was being used. And artists work for years, decades to define a style and like what makes their work unique. So granted, every artist looks at other artists' work. Like without AI, it's like for generations, like we look at other people's work.
Learn from
we're
each
inspired.
other. Yeah,
we're like, whoa, that's such an interesting technique. I want to incorporate into that. But I think we're talking about it at a whole different level.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Is that enough topics about AI? Like there's... I will say this. I think there's some...
Is there any good thing that AI brought to the animation industry?
I think there are some jobs that frankly nobody wants. Like nobody really wants to do certain things.
Yeah, some.
That's a great way to incorporate the AI.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I think AI, like for example, masking or pulling characters off a filmed background and putting them onto a different background, like. There are people who they have to go into Nuke or whatever compositing program and like mask out every frame by frame to get this character. I just don't think that's anybody's real passion.
Okay? Passion job.
So I think there are certain things like that AI, if I could have it like extract this character, like do a lot of the very tedious things that I have chores. The chores, I think it could be used for that. I mean, I would like to think of AI in a similar way to like, we use calculators. Like we don't find that it's cheating to not do the math on paper, right? Like we're okay with calculators. Like nobody's like, hey, that's cheating, or you should use your abacus. Nobody's doing that.
He's going to take over the world.
Exactly. So I think if it can do some of those things, like, okay, we know how to do it. It's really like we have an idea, we want to get it there. I get concerned about like this concept of, the idea, like what is created with this prompt that I made that.
What is creativity?
I don't buy that. I just don't buy it. And partially, I know I sort of jumped a little bit to a parallel, but as an artist, I think, okay, this is a whole other topic. It's still under the AI umbrella, though. As an artist, okay, non-artists I've heard have used AI as the use of AI as a way to expedite productivity. Like, why wouldn't artists like it? It allows them to get to the final result like so much faster. Yeah. There's a lot of problems I have with that argument. One, I think that doesn't show an understanding of what brings joy to an artist.
Yeah, it's not so satisfying.
The joy an artist gets from creating is actually the process of it. It's actually not the final result.
It's the way.
It's the struggle.
The torture.
It's the torture to actually get to the final thing. Mm-hmm. Then when you get to the final thing and you believe that it's good,
it has value.
It has value. You feel like that is so rewarding. Like, it's actually the journey, and the more painful the journey, the more great the reward when it works. So the idea of just like an instant you have an image, that takes all of the reason why I would want to be an artist. It's not about the final product. Like, I've mentioned this to other people. It's almost like if we said, okay, as an athlete, why don't we just put the data from your team into a computer and decide who's going to win? Well, what's the point? Like, I became an athlete because I want to perform on the field. Absolutely. I want to take all this training that I've done and actually compete and maybe win. And when you win and you've done that, that's when you get that reward.
Absolutely.
It's the process that actually you're passionate about. It's the journey. And then when you win, it's so rewarding. Sure, you could just say like, well, this team's better. Boop, 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 boop. Oh, they won. No athlete wants to do that. Like,
that would be so nonsensical. I'm just thinking about that situation.
Exactly.
That would be so nonsensical.
Yeah. So
that's a great point.
But you've heard that concept that people will bring up, like, well, why? It just makes it so much easier for artists. Well, easy doesn't mean it's good. Better, like, it doesn't mean it's better. Like, it shows that they really don't understand the mind of artists.
Those people are for sure not artists. Athletes also.
Yeah.
But also the people that are maybe not so much in depth of the knowledge that takes for an animated film or even for a feature-length film, which is an action-based and live action, for example.
Yeah.
I think people really recognize if something comes from an AI-made film or something that comes from a person who, like you said, used his trauma to give some value to the story or to some particular film. Because also right now people don't like films that have a lot of CGI in it because they want to see the real thing. And I think those two things are really, coming close to each other. And right now I'm not seeing that AI has this level of authenticity that is going to take over the real thing.
It cannot be authentic from a
It's
technical side. It has
stealing,
its technical limits.
It is interesting because I agree with you, but it is interesting. I don't ever want to use the argument that AI can't do something because AI is in its infancy. So to me, it's actually it's evolving, and so I don't ever want to be like AI could never create something currently. But I guess to me that it opens up a much bigger question, a very philosophical question about, as a society, what do we think life is even about? Like, what should humans like? What should we choose to do? Like, do we have any kind of restraint as like a species that we should say, you know what, we don't think life should be like that. Like, we actually want to value certain things like art and rewarding hard work. And if we as a society think that that is valuable, unfortunately, I think the answer is no. But I wish that we had the restraint to decide we're not going to go down that path. We're just going to decide that we value rich life experience more
over the easy life.
The easy way.
Yeah, to me it's kind of it's Jeff Goldblum's line in Jurassic Park, like, just because we can, does that mean we should?
Yeah. Good point.
To me, that is the biggest question about AI, because I don't want to say it can't do anything, because again, we're like a couple years in.
Yeah.
Like, who knows what it could be like. So I don't want to. I think that's not a very long-lasting argument, and also it's a very subjective argument whether it works or not. Because again, like I said, a studio executive thinks it works today. They see two images and they're like, they're the same.
From their perspective,
and this one's faster and cheaper. So why? And again, that gets back to the pressure right now on studios, and it's why you see so many sequels. Studios don't want to take risks. Yeah. They want the sure thing.
This IP works. Great.
This IP works. Yeah. Keep making those. And actually, as an artist, I'm not really interested in doing sequels. I have already done the first one. I want to do something new. So I want to do original things.
Do you like as an artist when you're pushed, like when you hit a wall? Do you like
100%.
Yeah.
To me, that again, that's part of the journey. Part of what makes the reward so great is when I hit that wall, like months ago, and even it took me a while to get through it. I couldn't solve it. Then I solved it. First of all, that's a reward in and of itself. Like, oh, I figured it out. I solved the riddle. Now I can move forward. And I think this really works, okay? You do that enough times. At the end, when you actually release the project, again, that part it's satisfying, but it's nowhere near as satisfying as like having crossed the finish line at all and having done this thing that was so hard to get to, but you're so proud of because you put so much into it, you know?
And you overcame the obstacles.
You overcame the obstacles. Yeah. Like for me in the Mantis Parable, like I said, I wanted to learn, so I did all the parts. And I would recommend this to any young artist of any kind, filmmaker, whatever, who has a big project that they want to do. I committed to working every Monday night. I knew it was going to take me a while, but I committed to every Monday night I was going to work on this film. And that meant if friends wanted to get together, if somebody had something, Monday, I had to treat it like, no, that's on the calendar. I'm doing it every Monday night. Yeah. The main thing that helped me with is when I hit a wall, I knew that I had next Monday night. And I knew I had the following Monday night. So I could go to sleep knowing that I hadn't solved that problem yet, but I had already booked time in the future, and I believed that at some point I was going to get through it. You know, I chose something really dumb to animate, which is a mantis, a praying mantis, and a caterpillar. And I'm not a rigger, like I'm not a professional rigging, like bones and the puppetry. Yeah. I would not, I mean, I can rig, I'm not a professional rigger, and yet I chose something with 6 legs, 4 wings. Like the caterpillar has all these, has like a weird soft body with all these legs, and it was a really stupid idea, okay? That's another tip. If you're starting animation, don't choose those to start animating.
Leave the centipedes out.
Yeah, exactly. Don't do that. But so that was a struggle for me. Like, how do I even rig this character? It was so difficult. That was a challenge that I remember just like banging my head against the wall. Like, how can I make this character move in a reasonably authentic way? It just wasn't working and wasn't working and wasn't working. And then finally, it worked. And I was like, I think I figured it out, and I could start animating it. And it was so rewarding because I had gone through that experience, you know? So those are the things that I remember that nobody watching the movie even thinks about. But it's a reward for me having solved that. And that was absolutely. Like 25 years or 20 years ago. How long ago? 20 years ago?
20, yeah. It's 2004.
It's so crazy. I mean, that's bizarre. But it was 20 years ago. I still remember that feeling of actually being in my garage on the computer, just like, what is like? How am I going to do this?
Oh, God. Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Okay, and
it's a great example. It's a great thing to say to people. Take the Monday night.
Take the Monday night.
Wednesday.
Because I know so many people back then, today, whatever. Anybody starting a challenging creative endeavor is going to run into walls.
Absolutely.
They're going to run into problems. And I would say 90% of them quit. They're just like,
it's too hard.
Too hard.
Yeah.
No time,
Or the other thing is, like I said, I committed every Monday night. I purposely tried to not work on it every day because I didn't want to burn out so fast. Like I didn't want this, you know, the fire to burn hot right away and then like hit that wall. And then like if in 5 days I couldn't get through it, I was just so burnt out. I was just like, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So I just said, nope, I'm going to just commit to that one night. And that let me know that I was going to have time that was already booked out in the future to solve these problems. And then once I got to a place where I was like really going, And it was like, okay, I'm making this thing and it is happening and I'm getting shots done and now it's just like making it. Then I started spending more time on it in the evenings. Again, I was still art directing during the day, but I was able to like make more progress and I had gone over most of the hurdles. But I would recommend if people are starting out, because there's so many projects that just get lost because people just burn out and just quit on them.
Yeah,
because
they
they're
lose
hard.
motivation. Yeah, and just
And that's
leave.
also a great thing. Like you said, you placed every Monday. It's going to be a work night, and you're doing other things, and you hit a wall. And sometimes maybe it's even better that the problem that you're trying to solve, it's working in the background.
100%.
Background thread.
You know?
Yeah,
That is so true.
Yeah.
Because at least that's how my brain works exactly. Like I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah.
I could be at work doing something else and it's like, wait,
yeah.
what if I,
Think about it in a
happens
different
to
way.
me.
What
think
if-
about it in a different way.
It happens to me many times during the software development projects. It's the same thing. Yeah. I sometimes during the evening or weekend I just get the little light bulb about, and then in the next working day I just implement it. But when if I would be thinking about that during the, let's say, working hours, I can maybe spend 2 or 3 hours just looking at the code, thinking, and not having idea what to do next. But at sometimes I just get it. And
this is a little bit of a different topic, but I actually find the value. I mean, I think I work pretty fast, but I actually find the value in things taking a little bit of time. I think that actually yields the best result. So, like, as technology gets faster and faster and faster and faster, I don't think that means that things will get better and better. Because sometimes if you get the result, and it kind of gets back to AI a little bit, but if you get the result instantly, your brain hasn't necessarily had the time to process, like, what is really going to work? Like, what is actually the best solution?
It's suspicious of the fastness of the
I'm suspicious
result.
of the fastness of the result. Like, because if it looks too good right away, I feel like
something's off.
something is wrong.
not
Like,
right.
you know what I
It's
mean?
too
Like,
good
that
to be
doesn't,
true. Yeah. There is
like,
a catch.
I don't
There
feel
is-
like I've really processed it, Yeah.
I think I understand what you want to say.
Yeah.
Okay, and one let's say not so in the industry related topic or question, to be precise, it's about your love for watching movies. I heard that you yearly watch how many, 200 and how much?
So there have definitely been years where I've watched over 200 movies in a year. I definitely go in streaks. I always watch at least 140, 150 movies in a year.
That's the minimum.
That's
below,
like a minimum.
You don't go below that.
And I should say, like I said, I consider myself a filmmaker first and foremost. I don't like a lot of animation. I don't like a lot of family entertainment. So I feel like it needs to have some depth and meaning to it. And I think there's a lot out there, not just animation, not just family entertainment, but that just doesn't have a lot of that. So, if I watch 200 films in a year, I'd say probably around a dozen or 15 are animated. So most are not.
Below 10%. So it's
I would say below 10%. I would definitely say below 10%. The other thing is, I would say probably half of those films are international films.
Not
Not the animated films. Like half of the 200 are international films.
European and Bollywood or
Yes, exactly. I think it gets back to a little bit when you don't have the huge budgets, storytelling has to truly be king.
it needs to compensate. Yeah, absolutely.
And the performances and like the craft of it, you have to really do it well. And so I really appreciate those films, and I think we have a lot of great American films. I think most of them don't get seen probably outside of America. Not too different than like Croatian films.
Yeah.
I think you guys are like, if just they could see this film, you know. I feel the same way about the tiny independent American film that I think is phenomenal, but people just don't know about it, or they don't go see it, you know, because that same weekend an Avenger movie came out or whatever, and they went and saw that instead or something. So the other thing is, because I am a member of the Academy, so I'm an Oscar voter, I take that honor very seriously. So I feel like I want to do the work to see the films so that I can vote in good conscience and feel like I really do think this is the best movie, or this is the best editing, or this is the best sound, you know, whatever it is. So that's one reason why I watch a lot. And I'm also on the international jury for the Academy. So the way that works is every country can submit one film.
Yep.
And I vote in every... So a lot of people may not know this, like actually how the Oscars even happens. But
please.
Okay. So in the case of the international jury, most years we get 80 to 90 submissions. So 80 or 90 countries submit. And I don't watch all 80 or 90 films. The people who are in the first round in the jury, of which I'm one, we get a selection of films to watch.
Only part of.
Well, we have access to all of them.
Yeah, but you don't have
There's
time.
actually another
for
interesting thing that we can talk about, like how. But we have access to all of them.
Okay.
But we are assigned a certain number. The point of that is that they want to spread across the jury all the films so that they're all for sure getting watched by a certain number of people. Okay. Now I always watch my block, which is usually 18 to 20 films. And then I've already seen usually a few that are not on my list. And then there's a few more that I have heard about, or I've thought I'm really interested in seeing that one. So I'll watch that as well. So usually in that first phase, I'll have watched maybe 30 or so of those international films in that first round. Yeah. Out of those, the jurors in the first round vote, and they pick 5 that are weighted. So like if you put one number 1, that one's going to get the most points.
Yeah, okay, I understand.
So you do the 5. After that, that's when you get the short list. So that creates a list of 9, I think it is, most years, 9 or 10 films out of the 80 that got the most points.
Okay.
Okay. Then the jury watches those 10, if there's any that they haven't seen, which there's always 3 or 4 that I haven't seen because they weren't in my group. I'll watch all 10, and then we vote again, and the top 5 become nominees. Those are the ones that all the Oscar voters are voting on.
Okay.
And those are the ones that the public around the world finds out were nominated.
Oh.
Okay. Then we have that vote on those last 5 dictates who wins the Oscar for Best International Film.
So technically there are 3 rounds.
There are kind of 3 rounds, and that happens for most categories. Okay, so not all the categories, but most categories. There's like the giant bucket of films that some percentage of the Oscar voters will be part of that group and vote on. And then there's a short list, and then anybody who is on the jury at that point and votes on those dictates what the nominees are. And then all the Academy members can watch those and vote. And that determines the Oscar winner.
I think we explained this
pretty well.
Yeah.
I feel like when people hear, at least in America, when people hear about the Oscars, they are like, the Oscar voters, they don't know anything, or they're so wrong about this or whatever, as though we're like all getting together and deciding we're not. We're just
We are part
individual
of
people
the machine
who are watching all the films and doing our best to just pick the one that we think is the best. Like, we don't get together and, I mean, maybe in certain settings we'll talk about like, hey, did you see that one? I thought that was really good or whatever, but no different than just normal people talking about movies.
Totally.
You know, it's not like we're this monolithic voting group that's like, hey, we decided this because we have an agenda. That is just not a thing.
Not the way it works.
It's just individuals in their homes watching
movies and have their own impressions.
Yes.
And by the way, how much people are included? How much people vote?
I don't know how many are in the Academy. I know it's like several hundred are in the full
Several
Academy.
hundred in the total number. Okay.
And once you're an Academy member, like you have to be nominated to be an Academy member, and then there's a vote on whether you should be based on your career. And then if you get that honor, then you're an Academy member for life. Like you're in forever. I know there's like one case or two cases of people who've been kicked out of the Academy, but that's extremely rare. So it's a lifetime.
It's a lifetime membership.
Membership.
Okay, and when you watch the movies, or to be precise, when you are evaluating movies, what the aspects you find the most important, or what you evaluate? That's a great question.
So I honestly really try to watch a movie without analyzing it too much, like at first viewing. Like I feel like I want to see it like an audience member in a way. Like I'm watching a lot of movies and I have a lot of, it's only natural for when I see something that's uniquely done that it's going to hit me, the analytical part of my like, whoa, that was a really interesting choice by the director or by that actor or by the sound design, like whatever. So it's hard for me to avoid that, you know, like while watching a movie, but I really do try to just like take it in as anybody else watching a film. There's so many examples of like when something just hits you and it almost like takes me out of the movie because it's so profoundly interesting or well done or unique that it's like, whoa. And I tend to be drawn to movies that I think they're trying something different. Like they're doing something bold, and I have seen enough movies to know that this was a risk. Like what they're choosing to do is really different, and I appreciate that.
And when it works,
it's like, whoa, that's so crazy. So it's like The Guilty, like I brought up before. Like when I see a film like that and I'm like, we have not left this room. Like, and I'm at the edge of my seat. Like that's something that
that's something
sticks with me.
Yeah.
And we're in this actor's face like the whole time, and he feels completely authentic. I buy him 100%. Like that will hit me while I'm watching the movie. I'll be like, this guy
wait a second
is so good. Like it's just so crazy good. I can't believe I can't think of this new movie because I literally voted for it for Best Picture. It was last year.
You should have said that.
The German film, it won Best Sound, and it's the German film about the family that's living outside the concentration camp during World War II.
Interessierenzone.
Yes,
Wow,
the zone of interest.
Zone of interest. In German, it's
Can't believe I literally was obsessed about this movie. That to me is a perfect example. Have you guys both seen it?
I haven't still. Okay. Talk about it. Yeah.
Is it okay?
I know
if
about it. I know about it. Yeah.
So, I know his historical background also about that guy and his family. So
okay, yes.
I'm the right person to speak a bit about this movie.
But the craft of that movie and the unique choices in that movie. First of all, the movie starts with a black screen.
Yeah.
For 5 minutes.
Yeah.
While you're hearing this growing like cacophony of haunting voices. Okay? I'm telling you, it is a palate cleanser. Whatever you were dealing with in your life before, when you sat in that theater and you're 3-4 minutes into this, it is impossible to not be like, whoa, this is like a different experience. And I am being told that what I'm about to see is very heavy and very serious.
That's a bold choice.
Super bold choice.
Wow.
Okay, then there's certain moments in the film where it'll just be like a shot of a flower, and all of a sudden, like a red flower, all of a sudden the screen, it's just, you've been watching like a normal film, the screen turns red and those voices come back and they get really loud and they get very haunting, and then it just cuts out and you're back in the movie. And they're just such bold choices that you can't...
Unconventional.
It's so unconventional. You know, people could argue whether it worked or not. For me, it really worked. And it was just like, it actually inspired me as a filmmaker to be bold. It made me go, you know, that thing that I was trying or thinking about trying that's so different. I've never seen it done before, but I think it could work. It helps me go, I'm doing it. Like, I'm going to try it.
There are no rules. Like, let's
There's
think
no
outside
rules.
of the box.
Like, it basically, so...
Be brave, yeah.
Be brave.
Try it, do it.
Try
I gotta
it.
see it now. I gotta see it.
You
I gotta
see it?
know
I
what
mean,
it is.
it's a profound... I found it to be so profound of an experience. Like, it kind of changed the way that movies, in a way, can be. Like, it's... So when I see something like that, I'm like... That is bold, and I reward those kinds of choices.
Yeah, absolutely.
In my voting.
Oh, that's great.
Do you see what I mean?
I agree with that.
That movie also was very interesting for me because it during the whole process of watching, I feel some kind of let's say bad inside feeling, because I'm aware that something very, very wrong and bad is happening nearby. But there is no single violence.
There is no violence in the movie,
violence.
And yet I would say it's one of the, if not the most haunting World War II movies I've seen.
One of the more,
I mean,
because the story is also very haunting. That the person lives like a normal family.
Life. It's just like
life.
A family. You're just
one wall away from the hell what was going on in Auschwitz.
And that movie also, I think, used sound in a way that I've never seen a movie do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, the movie works because of sound. If the sound wasn't like it is, and I'm not just talking about the haunting voices moments,
but in general,
the fact that what you're seeing does not really relate at all to what you're hearing is just such a phenomenally bold choice that...
I think it's the sound, but also the unique historical event.
100%.
I'm not speaking about the whole concentration camp, but about that guy and his family. He was a real person.
Yes.
He was really that way.
So here's another thing that I learned, because I when I first saw it, it was at an Academy screening, so the filmmakers were there and talked about the making of it. And you may not be aware of this, and I don't want to ruin anything for you. I don't think it will really ruin anything, but... The other crazy bold choice, and I think this lends itself to the authenticity of the performances, is that they hid all the cameras in the environment. The environment had hidden cameras everywhere.
I know that. I know that fact.
They had like 10 cameras per room.
Yeah.
And there was nobody on set who was from like the filmmaking team. They just had the actors go and perform their roles in these spaces without defining how they should be, how they should stand, like whatever. And they just cut the film. They actually had focus pullers, like people who are adjusting focus on the cameras in the basement. They had one for each camera, adjusting focus. There was nobody in the room.
Yeah.
They were downstairs watching through monitors, adjusting focus for every camera, so that later on they could cut the film together. And it created this environment where the actors were just allowed to really embody those characters
to get
perform and not think about like, oh, where's the camera? Or should I be standing this way? Or should I do whatever? It's just like, just be that person. Have this conversation.
Yeah, very bold. Yeah, that was also the brave choice because it's not conventional, I think.
Bold.
They've actually released that on a special feature on YouTube. I've actually seen that thing.
Okay.
Sometimes I know more about the film that I've never seen, but I know all the aspects of making it.
It was it's so...
I've seen that.
Anyway, those kinds of things, like you asked, when I'm watching a film, I'm not always aware of those kinds of things, but when I'm watching it, those things that stand out is like, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? Like, is this... Wow, that is a really interesting choice. I wonder if that's going to pay off. Like those things are going on. In
you respected the bravery of the filmmaker.
You know which film I'm excited about that I hope is going to have some brave choices. I mean, it's not going to be related to the topic that Zone of Interest is, but I hope that Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis is going to have some... I don't know, some creepy, interesting things. I hope. Yeah. But I've heard mixed reviews. I've heard.
We will see.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it as well. Most of the time, I feel like when I've heard a lot of buzz about a movie, it doesn't help my viewing. Like, I would rather not know about that stuff.
To be free of other people's opinions.
Other people's opinions for sure. Although I feel like I'm now at a point where it's like I frankly don't care what anybody else thinks about the movie. Like I have my own. I'm gonna have my own thoughts about it, and I'm sticking to my guns. There's certainly movies that I think are criminally underrated that I swear by. I think they're like masterpieces.
Which ones?
For example,
please.
Oh, I mean, there's so many. There's so many. I mean, there's a lot, again, that people won't even have heard of. Okay? So I'll give you a couple of those. Well, The Guilty is one.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Another is a movie called 9 Days. Independent movie. It's very high concept. What I mean by that is it's like a very unusual idea that is just a simple idea that is attacked from many different angles. I like films like that is just like, propose a thing, and then let's look at that thing from a bunch of different angles. So in this case, 9 Days is about a guy who's in this little house in the middle of a desert, and these people show up to his door, and his job, again, it sounds trippy, his job is to determine which of these 9 people deserves the opportunity to be born. Born. So they're grown. They show up at his home grown, and they don't know. It's like they've just sort of gained consciousness, and they come into his house, and he meets them, and he interviews them, and he kind of gets to know them.
Interesting.
And one by one, it's this is what I mean by high concepts. It's a very odd,
very interesting
idea,
story. Yeah.
But it really gets at like, what is the meaning of life? What is the value? Like, what determines whether a life should be lived? Okay, that sounds weird, but basically, he's choosing who should live. Like, or who should be born. Not who should die. Yeah. It just means that they were never born. Yeah. They're never born.
So technically,
it's a random group of these people that are at different ages, different ethnicities, and it's his job. It's a very heavy job to figure out who should,
especially for the
have
writer,
the gift of life.
The film.
Yes.
I mean, how do you have the confidence to make the right choices? Also.
Yeah. Man.
So the other thing that's really fascinating, and I'm not going to get too much into it because I do think you guys should watch it, is that in this little home, he has a room full of old TVs. Like, even the production design is really cool. He's got this room that has all these TVs stacked on each other, and on the TV each TV is a different person, and he's watching their life in real time.
Oh, cool.
People that he's put into the world.
And so he's
like a
monitoring them.
fan of them. Like he wants them to do well, whatever that means, in life. And so when one doesn't, or something happens tragically, it really affects him.
Yeah.
Because it's like, did I make the wrong choice? Was there something that I didn't see in this person? That it's crazy idea, but it's told in a very grounded. It's not like sci-fi. It's not weird. It's like very grounded.
It reminded me of, it's like when you're choosing the best film for the Oscars. It's kind of the same thing, right?
That's like a disaster. Yeah.
So that's a movie that I think most people just haven't seen, that I think is really worth. I find it really incredible. One movie that a lot of people have seen, maybe you guys have not, but that most people are just kind of like, yeah, it's good. That I think is really good is called First Man, which is a Damien Chazelle movie.
Yeah,
so I'm a big fan of Damien Chazelle. I've gotten to meet him a couple times and talk with him. And he had this amazing statement before an Academy screening of First Man. So he made Whiplash and La La Land and First Man.
And Babylon.
And Babylon, yeah. But at the time, it was a screening of First Man. And he said, all these movies, I'm basically making the same movie every time.
Just
it's the same theme for him.
Ending of the same film is like...
For him, it's like he's making the same movie. And that movie, the theme of that movie that he keeps making is this idea. The sacrifices you make pursuing your passion.
Yeah.
So in Whiplash, it's the young drummer wanting to be great.
Quits with his girlfriend.
Endures like terrible pain, endures terrible like toxic behavior from his teacher. Like just pursuing his passion, like these are sacrifices he's willing to make.
Yeah, physical, psychological abuse he's going to take.
Psychological abuse, whatever. La La Land is, again, characters pursuing their passion. In that case, Ryan Gosling character wants to have a jazz club. And so he's struggling. He's doing these just terrible gigs. He joins John Legend's band, which I have a whole other thought about this. I think that movie is amazing.
It is.
But
haven't brought it here.
Yeah, and I can actually tell you why that movie personally related to me separately if you want to hear it. But First Man, it's the story of Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon. And a lot of people don't love that movie, I think, because Ryan Gosling's character, Neil Armstrong, is pretty stoic. Like he's not super emotional. He seems a little cold. And to me, I felt like that is the point. Like to me, that movie is actually about somebody pursuing this very narrow, dangerous goal and having to mentally deal with the fact that he is surrounded by death. He's got so many friends that have died pursuing this same goal. His own daughter has cancer, dies. Like he's surrounded by so much death that it has created in him a wall where he has a difficult time all of a sudden relating to his own wife. Like he can't actually have a deep relationship with her because he's too afraid that
it's going to lead to nowhere.
It's going to lead to nowhere.
To the sadness.
He's going to die. Like something he's had so much loss.
And only pain comes from
comes from that. To me, it was so profound that then when he actually gets on the moon, spoiler, gets on the moon. And there's that beautiful moment where he throws his daughter's bracelet, which you don't see coming at all, into a crater on the moon. And he comes back home to Earth, and his wife, who's very upset with him, like they kind of had a falling out, and she comes to the glass. He's got to be in quarantine. Mm-hmm. He comes to the glass, and they put their hands up to the glass and touch through the glass. And to me, it was saying, like, I've done the thing. I can be back with you now. You know, like just this profound, I've gone through the gauntlet of loss and this very difficult thing, and it's done. And it's over, and I can reconnect. I just thought it was profound, and I feel like most people, again, are just like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, they miss the point. Yeah.
They just miss the point of it.
Yeah.
You know, to me, anyway.
Yeah, now when you say it, First Man really is like a gem that hasn't been appreciated enough. Yeah.
Again, I voted for it. I voted for it in both rounds of the Oscars. Like, it didn't even get nominated for Best Picture, and I was just like...
Like Christopher Nolan even had praises for the film. Like I heard great stuff.
Yeah.
I also feel like that for Babylon as well. I don't know why it has so bad.
So I actually, it's the one film I don't love obsessively from him. Mm-hmm. There are certain moments in the film that I think are transcendently amazing. Mm-hmm. The scene where Margot Robbie, like there's scenes that are so much authentic, like they're over the top, but they're also authentic about that miracle of filmmaking. Mm-hmm. Like when she can like cry at any sides. Moment. And like when Brad Pitt's character just like they get the shot and it's just like behind the scenes it's just chaos and like never going to work, and the guy has to get the right camera and they're waiting for the light and all that stuff. Like that is what it feels like to make a movie. It just feels like, oh my gosh, are we ever going to get there? And then sometimes you do. Sometimes the shot turns out. It's like, okay, back at it tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Like those are the things that I do love about
he captured the authenticity of that. He
captured it. He captured it for sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's his best work, but I don't know why people don't like it so much.
I like that movie. I like the Babylon, to be honest.
Okay. Your word against
me against the world.
I'm so glad to hear that you've met Damien Chazelle.
I mean, I'm so, as an Academy member, I'm so lucky. I meet everyone. I mean, at screenings or so many events. And the thing that I really appreciated about it is that when you're just with a bunch of Academy members, there is no, like I was saying, I hate celebrityism. I'm just not into person worship. I'm just not. And when you're just in a room of Academy members, nobody cares. Like people just want to talk about, because we're making sacrifices, pursuing our passions. You just want to talk about the craft. You just want to talk about like the real day to day. Like you have real questions about choices and how was it to do that? Because we've all been in that spot. Like we've all had to make choices and difficult things, and we can relate in that way. So people are just for the most part, people are just comfortable. There's a lot of in Hollywood. Again, we've talked about what Hollywood is and what it isn't. But in the celebrity culture, you know, when you're promoting a movie or something, you have to be a certain way for the fans. You have to be a certain way for the throngs of people that are just obsessed with you. And so it's so nice to just be able to be comfortable with just other people who are in the same trenches as you are. Even if you didn't work on the same movie, you can just talk about the real challenges and not about like I'm promoting the movie and I have to say these things and I have to
It's not our authentic and let's say honest.
Actually, come to think of it, there was I went to a couple screenings of First Man that were sort of like that. One was the Academy screening with Academy members. Then I went to another one that was open to some other groups that wasn't just Academy, and it was night and day the experience, because, and I've had this many times, this experience, there were a lot of people who were there that are not necessarily in the industry. They may be in marketing or something else. And Ryan Gosling was there, and everybody was surrounding Ryan Gosling. Mm-hmm. And my son, who's also a filmmaker, he actually just graduated from USC Film School. I brought my son to it, and because I wanted him to meet Damien and talk and kind of ask questions, because he's an aspiring filmmaker. And Damien Chazelle, the director of the movie, is off to the side. I know what he looks like. Nobody else knew what he looked like. He was just standing there by himself in this big room. Everybody's talking with Ryan Gosling, who's great, but Damien Chazelle's standing there by himself. So my son and I just walk over and we just talked for half an hour.
Wait, really? I thought Damien Chazelle was like partially a celebrity, because when you think about new directors coming up, who's going to be like the new Tarantino?
I mean, he's definitely. I definitely consider him in that caliber. I'm just saying at that event with that crowd, that's not the crowd that knows what the director looks like.
Yeah. Okay, maybe they know his name and surname, but they don't know his face.
They don't know. Yeah, exactly. And another example at that same event is Justin Hurwitz, who's the composer, who I think is phenomenal, like so amazing. He is the most down-to-earth, grounded guy. Talked with him forever. All he wanted to talk about was like nerdy music stuff, like the new device that he had just gotten that he was playing with or creating sounds with for the next film that he was composing. Super down-to-earth, normal guy. Like, those are the kinds of things that what I'm the most grateful for being an Academy member, is just getting to talk shop with people who are in the trenches, like filmmakers who are just making the stuff and trying to make something great, And again, most of them are pretty normal, down-to-earth people.
Human beings.
Human beings
like me.
I saw Ryan Gosling a couple years before that driving a minivan. Like they're just normal people.
Oh, he just happens to be an actor, and that he
just happens to be an actor. And everybody sees what he's doing.
But he's not the roles that he plays. He's a person.
Exactly, he's a person.
He has his private life, his problems, his things that he likes, he don't like. Like all of us. I understand what you're pointing. Okay. I think that we covered up in this intro. I hope for the viewers interesting conversation, many topics. And do you maybe have anything else which we can?
I have many things to
but then we should film many more episodes.
I hope I didn't go off on too many tangents. And
I don't think so. I think we optimized that.
I mean, you can probably tell, I'm passionate about.
It's visible, and that is good. And that is what we are as well.
I could talk forever about it.
And that is very good because that makes conversation more interesting and more sincere.
Cool.
I think I have something that we could close this podcast with. What would you say? What piece of advice would you give to an aspiring young filmmaker or an animator? What would be the piece of advice that you would give to someone?
I have it, and I can't take credit for it. But in fact, I show it to my students. I'm going to actually show it. I believe I'm doing a keynote here in a few days here in Variston. And it's just a little thing that I think is so true. And it's actually from Ira Glass. So Ira Glass is a writer. In America, there's a podcast called This American Life, which I highly recommend. It's a brilliant podcast, and he is the creator of it. And he's a great writer. And he was actually interviewed. And so this was from a live interview. He just off the cuff talked about this. And somebody made a little short, kind of a short, it's called kinetic typography, basically where they take the words and they kind of have it animate, and kind of present it in a visual form. So I highly recommend people looking for it. Maybe just look up Ira Glass on creativity or Ira Glass on, I don't know what it would be called, but look for it. It's on YouTube. But I can explain it to you. So he talks about that any creative endeavor, when you're starting out, you're passionate, you're ambitious, but the work that you're going to do is not going to be very good. Okay? Like, in the beginning, it's not very good. And how he describes it is your taste is really good. So that's the thing that has kind of bubbled inside of you that is like, I want to do that thing and I want to make great things. But for a long time, your work is not going to actually live up to your own standards even. And he talks about, for most people, when they come to that realization and they're not creating the work that they feel like is reaching the heights that they want to reach, they quit. They just bail. They decide not to do the creative endeavor. They decide not to pursue that career. Okay? And he goes into a little bit of detail here, but basically everybody goes through that. Like, everybody goes through a long period when you're starting out where you're unimpressed. Unless you're like an egomaniac, you're unimpressed by your own work that you're doing. And for so many people, that ends up causing them to quit. But his advice and my advice is the only way to get out of that is to do a ton of work, a huge volume of work, and just keep at it. Even if it's not reaching the heights that you have set for yourself, even if it's not, you just need to do that, and it's going to take a lot of time. But if you stick with it, you will get to that place where you become happy, hopefully, with the work that you're creating. But it takes years. And Ira Glass even humbly says it's taken him more than anyone else he's ever met. Like, it's taken him more years than anyone else to get to that point. So I guess my advice is, nobody comes out of the gate just creating the thing that they've always dreamt of. Okay? It takes time, whatever it is, whether it's writing, art, it takes time and effort and process that you just have to fight through. But you will get there if you stick to it. So I mean, I've been doing this sort of creative endeavor for 30 years, and I still find it inspiring. I still feel like I'm never creating quite the thing like I'm always, but I think that also is part of the drive to like keep going and trying to make new things and different things. So I find it, it's sobering in some ways because there is no shortcut, and AI isn't going to do it. Like, AI is not going to get you there. I don't think it's going to get you the satisfying career, It might be a shortcut. It might get you one gig.
Yeah, on
the short and then,
term.
You got this thing,
term.
and it's like, but also, did you get any joy out of it? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So do a lot of work, muscle through, and you will get there. I will say this for me personally, like every painting I start, every single one, there's a phase where, like if I'm doing a painting, there's a phase where I think it is terrible. And I feel like I shouldn't show it to anybody because I would be embarrassed. People would find out that I'm actually a fraud. It's this imposter syndrome thing. Even today, I'm so grateful to have been part of so many projects that people know and love, and I'm so proud of them. And yet still, when I sit down and I'm doing a painting, I get to a certain point and I'm like, how am I going to, is this ever going to get there? Like, is it going to get, and you just keep at it. And it's just like, well, I know that's not working, so let me fix that. And I'm going to work on this over here because that doesn't look quite right. And you make these little micro adjustments, you keep working at it, and then it gets over that hump, and it's like, it's working. And then you regain your confidence. Like every project, every painting, every story, everything is like that. I think every creative endeavor is like that. It's like you go through these phases where it just feels like it's not working and you want to give up. And I guess the point is, Ira Glass and I would tell you, don't give up.
Yeah, don't give up. Yeah. Totally, I get you. I also, and from this podcast project and from my software development work, but from general any craft that you mentioned, I learned that the continuity is the most important. Because, for example, when you hit the gym for the first time in your life, you have too many kilograms and too less muscles, and after 1 month, after 2 months, you won't be the Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like that. But
totally.
but each training you will get 1% or maybe 1,000, one part of the 1,000% step to your perfect body. And the most important thing is to keep the continuity, to work and to be aware that it will not be perfect for many maybe years or maybe more than.
And that's hard.
But that's a fact.
In English, we use the word grit.
How grit?
Grit.
Grit. Yeah.
Grit.
Grit.
Like it takes grit.
Okay, I understand.
Which is like through adversity, you just keep going at it.
Yeah.
Because you believe that at the end, it's right. It's good.
Yeah, you need to keep that belief even in the hard times.
Yeah.
And I think Jordan Peele summed it up perfectly when he said about any creative endeavor. He said that when I'm writing, I'm simply always reminding myself that I'm
use the same quote in my classes.
Shoveling sand in the box so I can build castles later.
That is specifically true about screenwriting.
Yeah. Because
your first draft is not going to be. It's not going to work.
I know. I've tried. I know.
It's not going to work. Yeah. And believe me, that's a great quote. I use it on myself when I'm writing a screenplay, when I'm writing for my show. Like, get through a version. It's not going to be right anyway. Just get through it.
Just do it.
And the sandbox is full. Okay? Now I can start massaging and working with something. It's at least a skeleton of something. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
Josh, thank you for this.
Thank you for having me. It's been. I always love talking about this stuff, so it's been a joy.
Yeah, as well. And it was also for me one very very interesting conversation. I really enjoy it, in spite that I'm not so big film lover like my dear colleague. But it was very interesting. Thank you, thank you so much for
my pleasure.
It's been an honor. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. I think we've learned so much, and I hope that people at home also gain so much wisdom from you and from this conversation.
My pleasure. It's been great.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm gonna switch to Croatian now just to the outro. Hvala puno svima na gledanju. Pratite nas na svim platformama, znate sve već i sami. Do sljedećeg gledanja. Ovo je još za kraj bio Josh Staub još jednom i vidimo se svi u sljedećoj epizodi. Bam.